All right. Welcome everybody to ANC3C's February meeting. My name is Bo Finley. I'm the chair of ANC3C. And Rachel, can you validate whether we have quorum? I believe we have all members here.
Yes. Lee Bryan is connecting, and I think Maureen is too, but yes, they're on their way in, hopefully.
Great. And yes, Commissioner Boucher is here. I don't see Commissioner Reba yet, but when he's in, please let me know and I will make him a co-host as well. Great. And Rachel, could you verify our notice?
Yes, that was also sent out to all the listservs.
Great, thank you so much. And now we'll be moving to the approval of the agenda. Is there anybody who has any motions for regarding the agenda?
Yes, I will be, I'd like to add a request for a letter of support from ANC3C for an ABRA license from Matchbox Cathedral LLC. This will be their location on Newark Street in Single Member District 3C 06. So,
Commissioner Hoyt, this is a stipulated license, so it would be temporary, probationary before they are given, before they apply for a full license?
that's correct.
Okay.
And this request came in after our agenda for this meeting was finalized. So that's the reason for this request coming up. Yeah.
Well, fortunately, this is a draft agenda that we send out, but yes.
Are you putting it on consent or actual commission business?
I believe this would be consent, no?
It's up to you.
It's up to you, and if somebody objects, then it will be moved to commission business.
Yes, consent. Thanks, Maureen.
Thank you.
So, okay. So we have the agenda featuring a new addition on the consent calendar for stipulated license for Matchbox and Cathedral Commons. Let's see, is everybody okay with the agenda? Are there any objections to the agenda? All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
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 Oh.
Okay, I hear 5. So yes, Commissioner Pagets.
Commissioner Reba's in the building now.
Oh, great, great. I'll make him. Thank you. I'll make him a co-host. Sorry, Commissioner Reba, I'm scrolling down to find you in here.
Oh, and we have our first violation
Okay.
here in the chat. Does somebody want to shut this down?
Yes, go for it. Please kick them out. So we don't want to disable the chat, but we've disabled screen sharing for non-commissioners and for people who are not presenting. We don't want to shut down the chat because it makes it very difficult for folks who are having technical difficulties to participate in our meeting tonight. So unfortunately, we're going to have to, we've got this immature person we have to kick out. And have you been able to kick them out?
They are gone, and we'll keep being careful.
Great. So my apologies for that Zoom bomber. Moving back to the agenda, which I now have to pull up again. Let's see. So we've got approval of the agenda. Now we're moving on to announcements. Are there any announcements, commissioners?
Not for me.
Thank you. Principal Cruz, I'm sorry, I just saw what was going on in the chat and I agree completely. That was racism, not immaturity.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner
Mr.
McQueen.
Chairman, are we going to announce the reversible lane study meeting?
Yes, great idea. Great idea. Thank you so much for the reminder. So we have two announcements. The first is the Connecticut Avenue Reversible Lane Study meeting. We'll be meeting on Tuesday virtually, Tuesday the 23rd at 7 p.m. If you go to the anc3c.org website, you'll be able to find the timing will be, or the Zoom link will be meeting from 7 to 8:30. We'll have a presentation by the Department of Transportation where they will talk about the study that has been going on, I think, for the past year and a half, evaluating the safety and efficacy of the reversible lanes on Connecticut Avenue. They have 3 options that they'll be presenting. The first is a no-build option, preserving the lanes as they are. And the other 2 are called option B and option C. And option B is eliminating the reversible lanes and maintaining parking. Option C is maintaining some of the parking, eliminating the reversible lanes, and adding bicycle lanes. They can go into much greater detail on Tuesday, so please join us for that. And thank you, Commissioner McWood, for setting that up. I get to sort of cross the finish line and claim credit for it. Then the other announcement is that on a week from tomorrow, we'll be having the first Transparency and Public Processes Committee meeting. And if you go to anc3c.org, you'll be able to find the Zoom information for that too. If it's not up yet, it will be soon. Thank you so much for the reminder. Okay, any further announcements? I know we have a number of folks who are going to speak in the community forum today. Principal Cruz and I believe Stacia Cardill are going to speak. If we can unmute Stacia and Principal Cruz. There we go.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Is
Do we have-
Stacia on the meeting?
Stacia, are you unmuted?
Yes. Hi.
Great. Hi, Stacia.
Hi.
Long time
How are
no
you
see.
doing, Commissioner Finley? It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. If you would like to, either of you would like to share it, I can give you that permission right now, or I can share the screen. So,
I would love if you could share the screen just so we're sure there's no technical difficulties, and I'll let Principal Cruz kick it off. And we know our time is short, so we'll keep it very brief.
Thank you.
Yeah. Pues buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Mayra Cruz, soy la directora de Oyster Adams Escuela Bilingüe. I've been the principal here for 7 years now, and we are seeking support in our playground renovation. If you're not familiar with our school, Oyster Adams is super interesting. We teach 3 languages across 10 grades and 2 campuses. We are in Ward 3 and Ward 1. And we are the only school in Ward 3 that has not been renovated, and one of the last schools in Ward 1 to never get a renovation as either. Adams, which is in Ward 1, but serves Ward 3 residents, is up for renovation in 2023. And we do a good job trying to figure out the building, but it is pretty much falling apart. And the playground there is in a little bit of better shape in terms of the Oyster playground. And I have tried everything the last 7 years. DGS orders, working with DCPS capital improvement plan. Mary Shea has been vocal about seeing it, and it's over 20 years old with absolutely no renovation. And I believe that kids, especially as we welcome kids back from the pandemic, deserve beautiful places to play and socialize. So I'll let Stacia take it from there. She's a parent leader in our community.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacia Cardill, and I've been a resident of DC since 1998, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. So we are seeking support from the Mayor, Chancellor Farabee, and Councilmember Che for an immediate replacement of the Oyster Playground and an expert study of the Adams Playground. As you know much better than we do, we're in the middle of budget season, so the Oyster Playground hasn't been updated in more than 20 years. We have had a great deal of engagement from the mayor's office, which we very much appreciate. We have had the chief operating officer of DCPS come out and tour both campuses at the very end of January. We also had Councilmember Che tour just a few weeks ago. And then additionally, Commissioner Fink will introduce a resolution here next month in support of a new playground. And so we'd just like to show you a few pictures of what the playground currently looks like. So we had an emergency repair at the very end of, at the end of the month. This bridge was complete. There was a bridge that was connecting these 2 pieces of the structure, but now The emergency repair has created essentially a play structure with 2 pieces of plywood that are painted over. And again, we'd like to thank Commissioner Fink for bringing this to the attention so we could get some immediate repair, so it was not creating an actual emergency situation, but we still think that it's not safe for children to play on. And we can just click through. Yep. So here's the pictures of the unsanded plywood on the play structure as well. And just as a reminder, so this playground hasn't been updated since 1996. So it's really outdated and it's broken and there's problematic areas. We're worried about this area, this anchor potentially causing problems for the children. And feel free for the next slides too. This is a climbing wall that's part of it, but you can see that it's becoming unfastened in places. And it's particularly sensitive as the children are returning to school too. Here's our sort of the state of the playing fields. And I think, yep, this one, and then there's another picture of some playing fields as well. So we would absolutely ask for the ANC's support as we move through the budget process. And ask for whatever help that you all are able to provide. Here are some pictures of the planters that are unfortunately in a pretty rough state. And this particular playground serves pre-K 3 all the way up to 3rd grade. So hopefully this is helpful illustration. I know Commissioner Fink will plan to take some additional steps at the next meeting, but if there's any questions or anything else that we can answer for you, our contact information is on the next slide. And we really appreciate all of the work that you do, not just for the Oyster Adams community, but for the larger community as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Stacia. Thank you, Principal Cruz. Good presentation.
Thank you, Stacia. Commissioner McWood.
Could I just ask one quick question? Are you seeking capital funds to redesign the program, the playground? Is this a 2-stage process? And do you know what the total amount would be?
So we have some general estimates based on the playgrounds from other schools that it tends to be around a $700,000 to $800,000 effort. We are seeking a full capital replacement. Certainly, if there is budget available for FY 2022, we would be interested, but also if there's existing funds that can be reprogrammed that exist right now, we would be very interested in that as well. We have children, Principal Cruz can speak to this in greater detail, but we have kids who are already back in-person learning at the start of, well, some students came back in December, more students came back actually just at the beginning of term 3. So there are students using that playground, but if it's possible to get some reprogrammed funding now and try to get on some kind of list to be able to be improved over the summer or as quickly as possible in the fall, we would very much appreciate any support.
Okay, so you're looking for replacement in kind?
I believe so, but I'm afraid I'm not a budget expert.
Okay.
So I would seek the input from Commissioner Fink if he has a better the language.
I think there's like twofold, Nancy. I think one is that there's an immediate need for a replacement and a renovation. And obviously, you know, if there's a way to reprogram money that hasn't been spent in FY21, that would be ideal. But a whole redesign and new playground with FY22 money is a second option as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any questions for Principal Cruz or Stacia? No? Okay. Well, thank you both so much. And I look forward to reading the resolution that Commissioner Fink writes. I believe we had Zach Rabarczyk from Cleveland Park Main Street, who's going to speak briefly about Cleveland Park Main Street updates. Zach, are you here? Can you raise your hands? There we go.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Commissioners, thank you so much for giving me a few minutes to speak with you and everyone in attendance tonight. If you don't mind, I have a few slides, but that's not necessary. I don't need to share. I just wanted to provide you with a few highlights from 2020 from Cleveland Park Main Street, and also let you and the community know about a few events that are in the works that I would love to get some community involvement in. In 2020, we keep careful track of what we're doing. I was able to assist over 61 of our neighborhood businesses with over 600 hours of technical assistance. And if you're wondering what the Main Street does, a lot of it is conducting walkthroughs and distributing information directly to our business owners, awarding small business grants. We gave just about $60,000 to our small businesses last year through grants given by the district government, as well as from donations from very generous community members like you all. So thank you so much for that. A lot of coordination between district government agencies, utilities, of just here trying to make the operations and lives of our small business owners a bit easier, and providing guidance when it's possible. So a few activities planned for 2021 that I want to note to all of you. Some of these are still in the works, so I want to say please keep an eye out for them. We try to post updates to the listserv and also our community newsletter that goes out once a month. We're working on a Cleveland Park Bucks local gift card, which will be modeled off of something that happened in Bethesda, the Bethesda Bucks program. So keep an eye out for that. It's a way for us to hopefully multiply our dollars to encourage folks to shop directly with local businesses within the Cleveland Park corridor that will accept the gift card. We are working with a new outreach and marketing committee to launch a Cleveland Park Main Street Gazette, which will provide updates on specials for our Cleveland Park businesses that will be in print and electronic. So also keep an eye out. We're having 2 rounds of small business grants going out, one of which will come in early March. We will need volunteers for our grant review process. I had a few community members that joined us for the last round. It's a great way to get involved. Also a great way to see the inner workings of the Main Street and also learn a bit about your neighborhood businesses at the same time. Hopefully hosting some webinars with our community organizations like CPCA, like we did last year. And also, in case you didn't know, the Main Street sponsors our Tuesday Talks event, as well as helps manage our Cleveland Park Farmers Market. So our next Tuesday Talk is, unfortunately, I know also on the 23rd, and there will be a local author and photographer featured there, and you can buy her book at Transcendence, Perfection, Bliss of the Beyond as a small plug. And also wanted to let you know that the farmers market is coming up for the coming season. We might be able to have an early market and an early launch this year. So please keep an eye out in your inboxes for more information as that comes along. And if you're looking for any ways to get involved, I would just encourage you to reach out to me at CPMS, stands for Cleveland Park Main Street, at districtbridges.org. And like I said, my name is Zachary Barczyk, and I appreciate the time you're able to share tonight.
Thank you, Zach. Does anybody have any quick questions for him? Okay.
Mark Rosenman has his hand up in the chat.
Great. Okay, Mark does not have a question.
No.
Okay.
Just saying hi. Cool.
So DeAndre Anderson, I believe, is joining us from Woodley Park Main Street, and will give us a brief update as well. DeAndre.
Thank you, commissioners, and thank you for inviting me to speak. My name is DeAndre Anderson, and I am the Woodley Park Main Street manager. And unlike my neighbor right down the street, Zach, I have been on the job. He's been on the job for a year. I've been on the job for 3 weeks. And so I'm excited to be helping out the businesses on the Connecticut Avenue corridor from Calvert Street to Macomb. We're in the process of providing some grants for businesses on our corridor. And so please, along with me, help spread the word that we will be providing $2,500 grants to businesses. We're hoping that the zoo will be opening back up early April. That's unknown rumor, but please don't tell people that I told you that. But hopefully that will come back. But I think my purpose will be trying to help businesses learn that first we need to be dedicated to the residents and not depend so much on tourism. That will be a nice added addition when it comes back, but we need to treat our residents great so that they can patronize the businesses on the corridor. And so I look forward to working with you all. We are raising funds through GoFundMe on our webpage, woodleypark.org. And if you all are able to help out, please do so, because some of the businesses are really hurting and could use our help. Thank you.
Thank you, DeAndre, and welcome. Does anybody have any quick questions for DeAndre?
I just wanted to say welcome. We're really excited to have you. Woodley Park needs some help, so it's good that you're here.
Great. Thank you. And DeAndre, if you want to share your email address in the chat, I think that would be helpful for folks in Woodley Park who want to reach out to you. So thank you so much for joining us. Okay, now we move on to the consent calendar, unless there are any other updates from the community. Okay, seeing none, the consent calendar. I'm moving the consent calendar forward. Are there any objections? Do I need a second, Nancy? Do you know? The consent? Yeah, okay, thank you. So no objections, hearing none. Moving on from the consent calendar, we are going to commission business, which I think, yes, Nancy, you're not muted.
Never mind, never mind. Mm-mm.
Okay, we're moving to commission business. And first is consideration of a resolution supporting the Office of Planning's recommended amendment 2123 to the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. And that is, I will present it. But first I want to talk about, why I'm moving it forward and give a little background as to why I drafted the resolution. First, I don't want 12-story buildings. I know that that's sort of been something on the listserv. I think high density land use doesn't mean that we're getting 12 stories. I don't want Connecticut Avenue to be a canyon of glass boxes. I don't know anybody who does. I don't want it to look like Roslyn. Our historic district deserves historically compatible growth. And we also, for several reasons I will get into, need more housing. Maybe that comes with an 8-story building set back a bit, preserves historic facade of, first floor retail and keeps with our historic character. I know we're talented enough as a community that with the toolbox we have, that we can make sure that any growth that does come to Cleveland Park is compatible with our historic charm. And tonight's resolution isn't about the historic homes on Newark or Lowell or Ordway, Macomb. It's about our business district, which is substantially lacking housing despite being literally on top of a metro station. So to address this in any way, to essentially legalize the negotiation of whether even to allow the consideration of housing, we must first address the future land use map. And I admit we took a different tack this time with the presentation of the resolution, and I think that has accidentally led to some consternation. I released the draft 5 days prior to the meeting. That's not typical of ANC3. Normally it's a lot closer to the meeting. And I know some folks feel as if this is being pushed through, but it is not. Pushing it through would have been following prior ANC practice of sharing the resolution on the day of the meeting or day in advance. But I hope we can move to, as a committee, and we can have every draft resolution public. Sorry, somebody muted me for a second. That we can have every draft resolution publicly available at least 5 days in advance. So now I'll provide a little background information about the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is required by the Home Rule Act, and the first one was in, I believe, 1950. Then the first one after we got home rule was in 1984. It was modified a few times before being completely rewritten in 2006 when our current plan was adopted. At the time, the 2005 plan was woefully out of date. Council amended our current plan in 2011. And the comprehensive plan consists of a number of sections called elements, as well as two maps, the future land use map and the generalized policy map. And I'll get to those in a second. In 2016, as part of the regular effort to update the comprehensive plan, the Office of Planning began a citywide outreach effort to engage district residents to help ensure that the comprehensive plan is aligned with the needs of district residents. This outreach began with workshops for ANCs, including ours, followed by a month of public meetings. And in 2017, the Office of Planning began soliciting proposals for possible amendments to the comprehensive plan, meaning its constituent elements and maps, pardon me. Around that time, then Commissioner Emma Hirsch, Bob Ward, and I developed 3 proposals. We surveyed the community, which some of you may recall, and received overwhelming support for 2 of them, one of which was increasing the residential density on the future land use map for the Cleveland Park Business District, not for the historic homes on Newark and Macomb and beautiful homes over there, no, just the business district. We submitted those proposals to the Office of Planning. So I've talked a lot about the future land use map. It's also known as the FLUM. So you'll hear the word FLUM, you'll hear up FLUM, down FLUM. The FLUM is the guiding map for land use policy across the district. It represents the ceiling of what is permissible in its designated areas, subject to the normal constraints of historic preservation, property parcel size, the economy, et cetera. This resolution deals primarily with the FLUM. Importantly, the FLUM does not require the maximization of zoning density within its land use categories. The land use categories allow for a range of zoning within them. Property owner does not have to build to the maximum that the FLUM allows, and the zoning commission does not have to change zoning for a parcel to the maximum that the FLUM allows, even upon request by the property owner. The generalized policy map provides for future planning analysis areas that are designed to refine the broader strokes of the comprehensive plan, and this is what's addressed in the last resolve clause of the resolution this evening. In our case, the Office of Planning proposed such an area for Upper Connecticut Avenue, beginning at Macomb and extending to Chevy Chase Circle. As Office of Planning Director Trueblood testified in November before the Committee of the Whole, that places that have large-scale changes along corridors, such as Connecticut Avenue, that there will be significant further analysis in neighborhood planning before any major zoning changes occur. So Cleveland Park and farther up Connecticut is already designated as an area that will be subject to further refinement and better protections to incorporate the new FLUM designation with our neighborhood. And this resolution is about changing the land use density levels on the FLUM for the business district. It doesn't change the load. It's these land use categories, as I mentioned, allow for a range of zoning within them, and the FLUM doesn't require the maximization of zoning. But I think this amendment is necessary for a number of reasons. First, the existing housing in the district is inadequate for the expected demand over the next decade. Even if that expected demand decreases by 10, 20% due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we'll still need significantly more housing units in the district at both market rate and affordable levels. If we do not add significantly more housing, especially in places that have room for it, like in Ward 3 in the Rock Creek West area, and along the Cleveland Park Business Strip specifically, then we'll see price increases that further gentrification and prevent more and more people from enjoying housing stability. Housing costs are going up significantly faster than wages and salaries. This in large part is due to insufficient supply of housing. Our land use policies in the district have artificially constrained the market. In Cleveland Park, the lack of housing leads people to look elsewhere in the city to live. This is a big reason why there's so much gentrification across parts of our city. Our community's historic and steadfast refusal to allow for the possibility of more housing in the 2006 iteration of the comprehensive plan contributed to the gentrifying forces that drove thousands of DC residents out of the district. And district residents are paying a greater share of their incomes for rental housing now more than ever before, which disproportionately affects low-income residents. Here, many point to the prevalence of rent-controlled housing, where I live in Quebec House, that we have plenty of affordable housing. Rent-controlled buildings are neither income restricted nor income assisted, and therefore they don't constitute affordable housing. While we can and should expand the housing voucher program and reduce the thresholds necessitating inclusionary zoning, these programs alone won't address the affordable housing crisis in the district unless we build more housing. This lack of housing leads to unequitable results that echo our neighborhood's historic past of racially restrictive covenants. Further, adding housing in our community is a boon for the environment. We're facing a global climate crisis. We watched California, Colorado, and Wyoming burn this summer and fall. We witnessed a record-breaking Atlantic hurricane season. We know that individual action will never be enough to prevent further climate change. We need our elected officials to make courageous policy choices to overcome the collective action problem of climate change. The policies we adopt at the local, national, and international levels can help save us. The actions we take now can preserve the planet as we know it, not just for our grandchildren, but even for our children. A new unit of housing in Ward 3 reduces the need to build a new unit of housing in a distant commuter suburb. An apartment building with family units built in Cleveland Park means that a housing development does not need to be built in Warrenton. That alone could mean hundreds of fewer car commutes per day, which translates to thousands of car commutes per year. Of course, that translates to even more thousands of tons of carbon dioxide emissions that are reduced. We owe it to ourselves and future generations to reevaluate and replace our car-centric land use policies to reduce emissions and to do our part to fight climate change. We cannot prevent those lengthy car commutes unless we build more housing. Now, many of us remember a Cleveland Park business district that hasn't existed in years. Even before the pandemic, we lost beloved businesses like Polena and their hamburger, Dino and their hamburger, Non-Viet, the Uptown, Pulpo, 4Ps, and Ripple, among more. The departure of some of our beloved businesses hit so quickly that Councilmember Che called a special meeting. I remember seeing a number of you there. Our neighborhood cannot even support a Starbucks. Our businesses need more customers. In a city, customers come by foot. Richard Nguyen, who with his family owned and operated Non-Viet in Cleveland Park, wrote to us to say that he has now, quote, seen firsthand how density has been great to our original Arlington location. And had the proposed changes in the flum happened years ago, we might still be seeing you in our restaurant in Cleveland Park. To Richard and other business owners, more residents means more customers, which means strong, vibrant businesses. For these reasons, I believe we need to support Amendment 2123. Now I'm gonna have to pull it up and move it. Apologize for the break. Okay, here we go. Resolution supporting comprehensive plan proposals for the Cleveland Park commercial area on Connecticut Avenue. We need a drink of water because it's 3 pages, I apologize. Whereas the Office of Planning has presented to the Council a proposal to change the comprehensive plan's future land use map designation for the commercial area on Connecticut Avenue in Cleveland Park between Macomb and Porter Streets, Cleveland Park Business District, from low density commercial to a mix of moderate density commercial and high density residential. Whereas the Office of Planning received over 1,000 public comments from stakeholders across the city and 33 official ANC resolutions with about 1,500 comments from other stakeholders across the city, demonstrating success and meaningful engagement to better inform the comprehensive plan update. Whereas ANC 3C first held a committee meeting on the comprehensive plan on December 3rd, 2019 and invited Director Andrew Trueblood to answer questions. Whereas the Cleveland Park Citizens Association held a committee meeting on November 21st, 2019 with Director Trueblood and had a community forum regarding the comprehensive plan on November 5th, 2020. Whereas the Cleveland Park Historical Society hosted a robust virtual discussion about the proposed DC comprehensive plan and amendments on October 27th, 2020. Whereas Cleveland Park Smart Growth has held multiple events discussing the comprehensive plan, the most recent on November 9th, 2020. Whereas the Cleveland Park Citizens Association filed comments with council on the proposed changes in the comprehensive plan on December 3rd, 2020. Whereas the Committee of 100 on the Federal City filed comments on the proposed changes to the comprehensive plan with council on December 3rd, 2020. Whereas Cleveland Park Smart Growth, I'm just gonna say did the same. Whereas ANC3F has passed 2 resolutions supporting amendments to the comprehensive plan, one in January 2020 and one in October 2020. Whereas ANC3C is one of 6 out of 40 ANCs that has not yet commented on the comprehensive plan. Whereas the Office of Planning met with about 3,100 residents and stakeholders engaged with DC Values Outreach Campaign the Office of Planning hosted throughout the city. Some of you may remember it in Tenleytown. Whereas the Office of Planning provided 88 days for the public and 123 days for ANCs to comment. This time frame represents the longest period of feedback provided for a draft comprehensive plan. And overall, 78% of the feedback was integrated, supported, or acknowledged in the mayor's proposal. Whereas changes to the flum are not self-actualizing, but instead allow the potential for rezoning to increase density. Whereas the Cleveland Park Business District is currently zoned as low density, which inhibits the addition of housing atop the predominantly one-story retail along this strip. Whereas several buildings within and immediately bordering the Cleveland Park Business District are zoned at heights of 90 feet, the Broadmoor, 90 feet, the Parkway, 90 feet, Connecticut Avenue Apartments, 40 feet, 2902 Porter Street, and 40 feet, 3446 Connecticut Avenue. Whereas Mayor Bowser's housing goals call for adding 36,000 new homes over the next 5 years, including 12,000 income restricted homes, 1,990 of them in the Rock Creek West area, where just 86 are currently in the pipeline, and where less than 1% of the district's existing affordable housing inventory can be found. Whereas changes to the zoning code in the form of expanded inclusionary zoning would require up to 20% of units developed on upzoned properties to be income restricted, a result of which is likely for the Cleveland Park commercial area if the allowable density is increased. And new construction also provides opportunities for additional subsidies to be used for affordable homes. Whereas to rectify a history of exclusionary zoning and begin to address the disparity of housing opportunity on the basis of race or economic status. Whereas adding housing at transit and neighborhood shopping hubs allows more people to live car-free or car-light, which has a benefit toward DC meeting its sustainability and reduced carbon goals. Whereas we face a global climate crisis due in large part to emissions from automobiles. Whereas the environmentally friendly land use policies we adopt on the local, national, and international levels can reduce the risks and effects of climate change. Whereas allowing the potential growth of the Cleveland Park Business District to naturally evolve to higher density mixed use over time will benefit the commercial area with more customers and opportunities for property owners to curate retail as amenities for residents. Whereas adding housing and affordable housing makes Cleveland Park a more inclusive neighborhood and welcoming to people from all backgrounds. Whereas the entirety of the Cleveland Park commercial area is within the Cleveland Park Historic District and is protected by the Preservation Act. Any development proposed must be found to be compatible with the historic district, regardless of what density is allowed by the form. Whereas the Office of Planning has stated that its preferred approach to rezoning areas that have increased available density because of the comprehensive plan amendment process is to address them on a project by project basis to encourage planned unit developments and discourage matter of right development. Whereas the Office of Planning has proposed a future planning analysis area of on the Generalized Policy Map for Upper Connecticut Avenue from approximately Macomb Street to Chevy Chase Circle, and has stated in testimony before the council that any upzoning that occurs within this area must receive fine-grained community planning in the form of either a small area plan or a PUD before it would be supported by the Office of Planning. Whereas any planning and subsequent upzoning would be a public process with community input, and the ANC would review any proposals and has automatic party status before the Zoning Commission for any upzoning proposals and community benefit agreements, ensuring a strong community voice in any future change in projects. Therefore, be it resolved that ANC 3C urges the council to approve the proposed FLUM Amendment 2123, increasing the allowable density within the Cleveland Park commercial area to a mix of moderate density commercial and high density residential. Be it further resolved that ANC 3C urges the council to approve the proposed change to the Generalized Policy Map and Policy LU 1.1.1 in the land use element to create a future planning analysis area on Upper Connecticut Avenue from approximately Macomb Street to Chevy Chase Circle. And be it further resolved that the chair, commissioners for 3C04 and 3C05 and or their designees are authorized to represent ANC 3 on this matter. Is there a second?
I would like a second.
Thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui. So I want to quickly talk about process. We're going to, as commissioners, discuss this first, as we typically do, and then open it up for community discussion. I know there are a whole lot of people here for this, and I thank you all for joining. So once we finish discussing, Director Trueblood will give a quick update or just sort of correct anything that, that I may have said that was incorrect and talk about the importance of this. And then we will turn it over to the community to talk. And at that point, I'll preface that before and explain how people will raise their hand so that we can have an orderly discussion. And so right now, is there any discussion among commissioners?
Can I just ask that somebody who's one of the commissioners or Rachel, if you could attach the file of the latest draft to the chat? I think that would be helpful to start so folks can see that.
I'm going to try and pull it up. Hang on a second.
Thank you.
So fellow commissioners, any discussion?
So, Bo, I can start if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you.
So I oppose this resolution. It's extremely controversial, and bringing this before the ANC with 5 days notice feels rushed, and it gives the impression it's being pushed through without adequate community input. It also fails to reflect the very different stances that community groups have taken on the FLUM, and hence it does not seem balanced. In my view, passing a rushed one-sided resolution cuts against the legitimacy of the ANC, and I think we should not do it. Further, I do not believe there was enough community engagement at the ANC level. The FLUM designations really intersect with zoning in complicated ways, and this resolution seems to be rushing, in my view, to support OP while residents still have a lot of questions. I think we need to better flesh out what high density residential really hopes to accomplish. Higher density does not necessarily contribute in a meaningful way to more affordable housing. And of course, we all want more affordable housing. Many social justice groups have said as much. If we seek affordable housing, we need to approach that directly rather than using this idea of affordable housing as a justification for high density that really means gentrification as developers profit seek and create market rate housing. I don't believe we should vote on this resolution tonight. I think trying to find common ground as an ANC is what we should try to be doing. There may be common ground around moderate density designation, but I think there are still questions. So, why do we want to support a high density FLUM designation when a moderate density one might be sufficient? I don't think we've talked about that enough. How exactly is the community protected against developers creating more market rate housing at the expense of historic preservation? How exactly does the FLUM impact future zoning decisions? And is the ANC reasonably expected to be the stopgap for that? Especially given how this resolution was sprung upon the community and is now being, in my view, pushed through, the ANC as a stopgap seems to ring really hollow. Further, now is not the time in the middle of a pandemic to hastily endorse this new FLUM designation, given the uncertainty of housing patterns post-pandemic. It's a time of great change and flux, and to make this a drastic leap now from low to high density seems ill-advised. So I strongly oppose the resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner Gerson. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I do have something I want to say, but in the interests of time, because I've seen a couple comments in the chat, I'm wondering if we should turn it over to the community and then come back to the commissioners. Just a suggestion.
All right. Director Trueblood, are you okay with speaking after the community speaks?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So we're going to have, because we've got all 180 people in here, in the interest of time, we'll limit comment to 2 minutes per person. And I hope it doesn't go 6 hours. That's the math for that. But what we'll do is you'll raise your hand on and Commissioner Siddiqui, if you'd be up for explaining how to raise your hand and to be recognized to speak, that would be fantastic.
Great. So there, Matt K. Wood has just shown how to raise his hand. What you want to do is you want to go to the bottom of your screen where you see your Zoom instructions. You'll see Zoom, mute, stop video, other things, and you go to participants. You click on participants. And then when you click on participants, the participant window should open on the right where you see a list of names. At the very bottom of that, you should see invite and a button that says invite, a button that says mute, something about muting, and then maybe 3 little dots. And if you click on those, one of those should say raise hand. And if that button doesn't say raise hand, that should say there as well. If you can't find a way to raise your hand, you are also welcome to also type in the chat if you would like to make a comment, and I will try my best to keep track of who raised their hand first and who sort of chatted first. And yes, and Commissioner Finley, were you also going to mention that we have a list of people who signed up?
Yes, yes. So we have a list of people who signed up. A link went out on a few listservs, including Cleveland Park listserv yesterday. I thought this would be very helpful. Those who are on the list, don't worry, we will call on you. We want to ensure that that is not just people who signed up on the list, though, because there's a lot more people here than signed up. We only got a handful of people who sign up on the list. But I believe Commissioner Siddiqui will be handling calling on people, and we've got 4 hands raised, so I'll let.
Mr. Chairman, are we going to limit the comments to, I think we talked about this.
Yeah, so I said
to 3C residents?
Yeah, so yes, well, so that's something I am a little concerned about, because obviously Cleveland Park does include parts of 3F. And so I think that the effects here will affect folks in 3F, so I would like to hear from them too. In the interest of time, however, I think we need to, I would like to check with my fellow commissioners. Is it okay if we end debate around 9:45?
So how long would are you saying the community comments would go to 9:45, or we would be coming to a vote at 9:45?
Community comments until 9:45.
I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah, if I may too, not so much as discussion, but more of a prelude to community conversation here. Just wanted to thank the community for what seemed at times the overwhelming number of responses and just feedback, as much time as it took over the past couple of days. Most commissioners, I would imagine, have read each and every email. So I just wanted to sort of preface our conversation by thanking the community for the feedback and for the emails.
Okay.
I definitely second that.
Yes, thank you everybody for your really well thought out comments. We appreciate them. So we will, Commissioner Pagets, are you willing to run a timer of 2 minutes?
All right, and then I will go ahead and start. So David Harris, since your hand is top of my list, I will go ahead and start with you.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. My name is David Harris. I moved to DC 30 years ago, and I purchased a home on Porter Street with my wife 17 years ago. I moved into Cleveland Park very purposefully to raise a family. I love the vibrancy of the community. I love the walkability, the business district, the sense of community. I really like all the aspects of it. I strongly support the OP's recommended amendment to the DC Comprehensive Plan. It's important, I think, to remember that this amendment would only allow for the possibility of increased density. Any projects would still have to go through so many layers of approval and consideration. Without this amendment, our community would lack that flexibility. DC needs more housing, and Cleveland Park residents need more neighbors to increase the sustainability of our commercial district, I think. We all talk about climate change, and I think we probably almost unanimously feel the same way about it, but this is an opportunity to meaningfully act. Anything that encourages increased residences around public transit helps sustainability and should be encouraged. My house is a 2-minute walk from the business district on Connecticut Avenue. I also don't want to live in Roslyn. I don't want to live near a glass canyon. If anyone should be worried about that, as a long-term Cleveland Park homeowner, I should, and I'm not worried about that. I strongly support this amendment, and I really appreciate our ANC commissioners' thoughtful consideration of the issue and the longer than usual advance notice and the transparency that the ANC has provided. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Next, I would like to ask Matt Kaywood.
Thank you, Sully. Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to thank the commissioners for putting this meeting together with so many attendees with the upgrade Zoom, and at a time that those of us with children, especially multiple children in the household, are able to attend, and those of us with jobs as well. So I think that's extremely important to getting a cross section of the community to participate, and I really appreciate it. You know, I think ultimately this you know, the FLUM, the resolution aside, like, you know, these plans have been, as Commissioner Finley said, have been in the works and have been proposed and have been on the table for a very, very lengthy time. And so, I think that it's very easy to always, nitpick and say, well, certain thing wasn't done with enough warning. And really that's, just you can endorse any status quo or inertia policy that way by saying there wasn't enough feedback or not enough, time was given. This is our opportunity to give feedback, and we're going to hear from a lot of people in Cleveland Park. As for myself, I'm a homeowner in Cleveland Park. I was able to buy in with my wife barely on 2 incomes because the affordability of Cleveland Park has gone, and the neighborhood has become impossible practically over the last few decades. And this trend is only increasing and getting worse during COVID. So we want to talk about COVID trends, talk about affordability decreasing further, especially when it comes to single family houses in Cleveland Park. I think it's no secret that the remedy to that, to increase affordability, increase diversity, which is also not trending in the right direction, is going to be to allow for the possibility of more housing construction. And the way you get market rate housing and the way you get affordable housing is by in the real world allowing more market rate housing, because that is what allows you the ability to negotiate for affordable housing.
Thanks, Matt. Sorry, that was 2 minutes.
All right, I'll just leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Next we have Roz Beitler. I hope I pronounced that name correctly. And Roz, I'm asking you to unmute, but I think you might not be seeing the.
Okay, you
Yes.
can hear me now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm the chair of the Uptown Committee that comes under the auspices of the Cleveland Park Historical Society, and I live in the Broadmoor, a wonderful historic building. My concern with the Uptown is I know the facade is protected because it's in a historic district, but it would be absurd to have it in the center of too much density. I definitely think we need some smart growth. I just wish that the buildings that would go on either side of the Uptown, nothing above the Uptown, would complement that height. I think you could still get a mixed, a diverse audience there. It would be a little lower than your lower minimum, but I think it would work, and it still would make Cleveland Park attractive. We're working on trying to make the Uptown viable. We all want a performing arts center in there, as well as a cinema. We have many different ideas. So please keep that in mind and don't quash this wonderful Art Deco icon. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Raz.
Eli, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you for hearing me tonight. Firstly, the draft resolution implies that any addition atop these structures would be difficult, if not impossible. The current zoning of the entire strip is NC3, defined as a neighborhood mixed use zone, which allows structures up to 40 feet in height with additional 12-foot penthouse and no density restriction. The zoning regulations themselves state that the goal of this specific Cleveland Park zone is to encourage a scale of development and mixture of building uses that is generally compatible in scale with existing buildings, and to help meet the need for affordable housing. So is the Office of Planning and the ANC, both of which helped these craft these zoning regulations just a few years ago, saying that this zoning classification is now incorrect? Wouldn't a more appropriate course of action and a better use of time and energy include examining how to best increase density without undue burden, for example, reducing or limiting parking requirements and lot occupancy restrictions under the framework of these carefully considered zoning regulations? The OP's proposed change to the FLUM, and by extension, the ANC's resolution in support of it, place extreme emphasis on the need for affordable housing. And increasing access to this type of housing is unquestionably an admirable goal, certainly one of the single greatest issues for our city to address, and should be a goal that Cleveland Park strives to attain. However, inclusive communities simply do not always require the highest possible residential density. You will note that plans for how to achieve this goal in our city have often been vague, rarely well thought out, and largely unsuccessful. We need a plan that comprehensively considers how to create a more vibrantly mixed income community rather than shamefully using affordable housing as a talking point for political gain. We understand from the proposed resolution and ANC members' explanation that rezoning properties in the area will require either a zoning map amendment or a planned unit development, while both the OP and the ANC stress that these processes are transparent and that citizen input is an important factor when considering a zoning change. There have been numerous cases where both the Zoning Commission and the ANC in a particular area have voted in opposition to many
Sorry,
of the most—
Eli, that's 2 minutes.
Sure, no problem, thank you.
But thank you. I think we have most of your comments via email too, so we appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Bonnie, you're next. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Bonnie Lepard, and my husband and I have lived in Cleveland Park for nearly 29 years. And I was president of Friends of Tregaron Foundation for 10 years and started the Tregaron Conservancy and ran that for 10 years. And we love Cleveland Park and been very active in the neighborhood. I've also served on the Cleveland Park Historical Society board, and I am on the Save the Uptown Theater Committee that Roz was just mentioning. I'm writing in opposition, well, I'm talking now in opposition about the FLUM and the comprehensive plan amendments. They will really challenge and change our neighborhood. And I think why we all love living here so much is because it's historically protected. And if you take this from a low density up to a high density, you're really going to have a serious impact in the character and the nature of our community. And I really support everything that Commissioner Vicki Gerstein said. I mean, I also think we're not taking into the fact that the pandemic has really changed the way that people live and work. We've all learned we can work remotely from anywhere. And I also think that you should take into consideration that Cleveland Park Metro stop is like maybe on the cutting board because the Metro usage is so far down and we are one of the weakest spots. So if you upzone and upgrade everything and then we have a closed Metro stop, what's the viability of that? There's so many empty office buildings downtown, and why would you build more housing up here when it's probably not even going to be rented out? But I'll really get to the historical protection aspects of this. Why would you go from low density to high so quickly without even considering moderate density? And I think you will seriously impact the character of the community. And I'm really worried about the future of the Uptown Theater. And you're going to, the possible owners of the Uptown Theater, if you upgrade this, they're going to put a 9 to 12 story building there. And we're going to be in a corridor of a canyon of all these buildings. And I just think that why people love to live here and why it's been such a wonderful place is because it's been protected, and we will lose our protections. And
Thanks,
we will—
Bonnie. That's been 2 minutes.
Thank you. Todd Kane, if you would want to go next.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kane. Commissioner Pagans, is there a way to get like a 10-second warning?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Todd Kane. I live on Ordway Street. I have lived in Cleveland Park for 24 years. And I was able to buy my house as a government employee. Today, there's no way I could afford to buy a house in Cleveland Park. I've been able to raise my 2 children in Cleveland Park. We've been able to take advantage of this wonderful, beautiful neighborhood. But again, people in my situation today would not be able to afford a single family home in Cleveland Park. I've been here long enough that I've heard lots of cries of doom about basically every single development project proposed in Cleveland Park during my time here, from the west side of Connecticut Avenue, the renovation of those buildings, to our new library, to the family homeless shelter built on Idaho Avenue, to the Cathedral Commons development. And actually all of those have added to the vitality and the health of our community. So it's really hard to hear these kind of calls for doom and destruction of Cleveland Park when these are really just very basic, simple, common sense, thoughtful changes to a development approach that we're talking about here. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank
You were
Todd.
under time.
Ed Carley, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi. I'll just read my statement here. Cleveland Park is an ideal place to add new homes because it is already on top of a metro station that's 3 to 5 stops from 2 major job centers. And, you know, there's talk about the pandemic and changes, and there will be changes, but there's still going to be people commuting to those job centers. We need more homes in DC and Cleveland Park in particular, so families can stay in the city and in Cleveland Park if we want to. Building in Cleveland Park does not lead to gentrification or displacement. You can't displace anyone when there are no apartments over the vast majority of our 1- and 2-story commercial strip. We need more houses to make this neighborhood more welcoming to everyone. Folks claim that this won't create affordable housing. We know for sure that doing nothing will guarantee that Cleveland Park remains unaffordable. And for that reason, I support the resolution.
Thank you, Ed. Commissioner Finley, no one else has their hand raised. If you want, we can go to the list.
All right, that sounds good. I'm surprised all these people now. Oh, we've got somebody.
Okay, Kevin, please go ahead.
Hi, sorry, this is actually Amanda, Kevin's spouse. He signed in.
Hi, Amanda.
Yes, so my husband and I have lived in Cleveland Park, Woodley Park, we're on Devonshire Place, Northwest, since 2016. Not that tenure gives your opinion any more weight, but I did want to point out something about the pandemic, just because everybody's talking about the potential impacts of the pandemic on our housing. We're actually considering leaving because we can work from home. We have been lucky to do that, and because we cannot afford any more space. We are of the children having age, as my mother frequently reminds me, and we cannot afford to get a 2-bedroom. We both do very well for ourselves, and it would just be financially a non-starter. So I wholeheartedly, me and my husband both wholeheartedly support this resolution. We need to bring more density to Cleveland Park. We need more people here on the streets. We need more larger units so that more people can raise their children here like Todd so successfully has. So I encourage those of you to support this resolution.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Megan, if I can ask you to go next, please.
Hi. Thanks for the opportunity to talk today. I think I've heard several people today talk about the pandemic and that we shouldn't do anything because we don't know for sure what a post-pandemic world is going to look like. But I think actually that's exactly why we need this amendment in the comp plan, because that's really what it's doing, is it's giving us flexibility for the future. Nothing is saying that you have to build high residential density on Connecticut Avenue in the Strip if this amendment passes. All it says is that there's the potential for that at some point in the future. It doesn't mean that upzoning will automatically happen. It doesn't mean that the Historic Preservation Office is going to be ignored. Every project has to go through all of those layers, but it does give us flexibility, and cities need that flexibility to meet changes, and challenges such as increasing housing and climate change, and who knows what else in the future might come up. So thank you for the opportunity, and I hope that you support the resolution.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Ronald and Dawn, if you both can go ahead.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Nice to meet everybody. We are actually relatively newcomers here to Cleveland Park. We just moved in last year. And so I would like to actually support what Megan just said, that I think the flexibility that this amendment or this resolution would bring is very helpful, because I'm actually one of those big bad builders too, that builds things in the city, and I can assure you that there will be a lot of review, and also I can assure you that given the bounds and limits of all of the approvals needed, there's a lot of massaging of design, and many times it brings out very creative and very good designs that could contribute and allow more housing. And I think for all the reasons that people have talked about so far, that more housing is needed. So I would support this amendment.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Alan, if I can ask you to go next.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm wondering about this idea that property values have become unaffordable in Cleveland Park. I've lived at Woodley Park Towers for about 15 years now, and the assessed evaluation on my apartment has changed practically nothing, less than 5% since I moved in. Now, I understand that the assessed valuation and the real valuation of properties are not always the same. But the change in the assessed valuation and the change in the real valuation must have some reasonable correlation, or else the assessments are completely out of line. So based on my property alone, I have not seen this dramatic rise in property values. So I don't necessarily see the need for bringing this supposed rise under control. I don't see the opposing rise. So for that reason alone, I question the need for this zoning change.
Thank you, Alan. I just want to add to people, if you are on the list, we will definitely get to you. So Commissioner Finley, just want to verify that if that's okay for me to say, right?
Yes, I mean, the people signed up on the list, they're guaranteed to speak. And I know some people who signed up who already spoke. So, you know, they're crossed off the list.
As soon as we're done with the lowering hands, we'll go through the list as well. So Marilyn Massey. There we go. Can you unmute? There we go.
I want to make just a quick comment or two. I got into this a little bit late, and I wrote a little email last Monday night explaining my concerns about this proposal. And I was lucky enough to get a response from Bo immediately, which I am very pleased with and thankful for his immediate attention to it. And one of the things that he said in his response was, I'm quoting from his email to me this morning, I agree with your statement that the demands of the present should not be ignored, but their accommodation must be done carefully. And I think that if you read through this resolution, you don't hear anything about a significant way about the historical values. It's all about the development and the reason for the development. So maybe we could add something to the resolution to recognize that there's competing interests here. So I just wrote down the following to go at the end of the first resolution. And it says, provided that any change in existing zoning shall be consistent with and enhance the Cleveland Park Historical District as determined by the Historic Preservation Review Board. I'm not sure that process is exactly right, but I do think it would be appropriate to recognize in the resolution that we have competing interests and that they need to be balanced.
Could you repeat that, please? Just so I get the wording right.
Yeah, the language I had was provided that any change in existing zoning shall be consistent with and enhance the Cleveland Park Historic District as determined by the Historic Preservation Review Board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we will now go to the list. We're getting some on the listserv that we're not going by the list or not by the list. So Bar Weiner, would you like to speak first? And let's see if I can get to. And I know that his first name is John. So Bar, I've just asked to unmute you. Bar, are you here? Please type in the chat. Oh, there we go.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep. Good. Hi, everybody. I'm Bar Weiner. I'm the president of the Cleveland Park Citizens Association. And I'm basically just going to, I guess, sort of summarize what we sent in earlier in case it might facilitate the discussion tonight. First of all, I just want to say I think that this discussion is incredibly productive. I do appreciate the ANC getting this conversation going again. You can see from just the remarkable amount of response, it's something that really matters to the community, and people really do have strong views. So thank you for that. I guess the question is, where do we go with this? And sort of 3 points on that. First, at least to us, it seems like the goal here is to try to speak for the community. I guess that's essentially what an ANC does. And I guess this kind of goes to some of what Vicky, I think, was saying earlier, frankly. But the point being that it strikes me, and I think at least our view is that it makes sense for, if the ANC is going to speak on an issue, to speak from a position that seems to represent kind of the will of the community, as opposed to just sort of a position, so to speak, especially when there's a topic that has such a range of views. Then the question, of course, goes to how do you do that? One factor, of course, is simply what the factors are you need to take into account. And one of those, of course, is that this is an historic district. And I don't think that's a particularly provocative point. I think it's just a fact to take into account. And if the plan is going to be internally consistent, then whatever FLUM designation we pick should be one that allows for zoning options that are consistent with the status of the neighborhood. And perhaps Director Trublight can speak to that during his remarks. I think it'd be helpful to know if all the FLUM categories are clearly within bounds for being aligned with the historic district status or not. That might really open up the discussion or narrow it, which might really help get this to a place that everybody can kind of rally around to some extent. Second point is, beyond that, if you're going to try to come up to a view of what the collective view of the neighborhood is, as Bo mentioned, there have been a lot of remarks and comments submitted already by entities in the community, Cleveland Park Citizens Association, Smart Growth.
10 seconds.
The historic, kind of a couple more seconds, Cleveland Park Historical Society, and I think they should all, they could all inform your thinking. Lastly, I think just in terms of the ANC having its maximal impact, if you're going to speaking from a place that's sort of trying to align the community rather than sort of taking a side, so to speak, I think will make for a stronger effect and help bring the community together rather than kind of keeping it apart. And frankly, give your engagement more stature, because I think otherwise he'll just be kind of one of the many voices from the neighborhood. And I'm not sure that's really the best use of the ANC's power. Thank you.
Thank you, Bar. Mark Rosenman, please, I'm asking you to unmute, and you can go ahead whenever you see the.
Thank you. I appreciate what Bar just said, what Vicky said, and Eli, whoever he might be, said. I think they're important comments, and I think rather than the ANC pushing one side of this debate as the winning side of the debate, it is really important to try to listen more intensively and intentionally to the voices that you're hearing, rather than simply trying to get an agenda adopted, a political agenda adopted. And I urge you to do that. I want to quickly say that I think there's great merit in what Commissioner Gersten suggested. The points I want to make, and I apologize for having pushed them out so much on the Cleveland Park listserv, but it seemed to me that the ANC moving this agenda so quickly without a broader conversation was wrong. I do believe that COVID changes everything, and that including, by the way, the population data on which this report, these recommendations are based. Patterns of work, patterns of commerce, patterns of transportation, the need to think about repurposing abandoned real estate, commercial buildings, hotels, etc. And it is silly, I think, to move ahead with a design or a recommended design that was predicated on a reality that no longer exists and may profoundly change in the future. Second, to say that you are going to jump all three categories,
10 seconds,
from the lowest density to the highest density, is absurd. And saying, well, we're going to do that, but then these other things will protect the community. It's like saying, stop us before we kill. There's just no reason to go to the extreme and depend on other mechanisms to bring you back.
all right, Mark, thank you.
One last word, if I may.
Sure.
Using the social, racial, and economic justice argument to push this agenda is offensive. There are much better ways to advance those agenda, and promoting this kind of a plan as the answer obscures and puts back those other efforts.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Rick Nash, if you wanted to go ahead. I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for this. The Cleveland Park Historical Society district has been recognized as being singularly important to Washington, D.C., one of the most intact examples of an Art Deco historical district in the city. Per HPO, no other historic district contains such a collection of lower scale commercial buildings. And according to the National Register of Historic Places, Cleveland Park maintains its significance in that the strip maintains its original integrity and scale. The Flum amendments will overwhelm and subsume that. Now, some say that the amendment doesn't mean tall buildings, that historic review will ameliorate its impact somehow. Frankly, this is flim-flum reasoning. First, if correct, why increase height and density so substantially at all? The Flum doesn't incidentally affect the historic district. It surgically targets its center. Also, it contradicts the 2020 DC Historic Preservation Plan, which specifically calls for zoning compatibility in historic districts, which the Zoning Commission itself has recognized, with zoning being necessary but not, historic review being necessary but not sufficient without also having compatible zoning. Third, developers routinely cite zoning before HPRB to assert that projects even slightly below matter of right limits are therefore compatible with historic preservation. Move the goalposts so much and the result will be a streetscape that's almost recognizable in a few years. Now, we've heard a lot about allowing for the possibility, but nothing about guaranteeing affordable housing in the Flum. In fact, there are over 1,500 residential units under construction or ready to break ground in or adjacent to the historic district. 3 projects on Connecticut Avenue alone. That total is 120% of the mayor's net new 2025 housing target for Rock Creek West, just in our Cleveland Park neighborhood alone. And steps from the metro, just outside the historic district itself.
10 seconds.
They could cite opportunities in Cleveland Park capable of substantial additional height and density without impacting a single contributing historic structure. The Flum amendment would not only overwhelm the historic district, it's not needed at this time. And thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Rick.
you.
Is Harry Martin here? I don't see your name on the participants list, but if Harry Martin is here by another name, would you like to raise your hand, please? Because you're next on the list. Okay, in the interest of time, Jerry Ackman, would you like to go next? I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a number of the points I was going to make have been made already. So I think the main concern I have about this is that we have a plan here that was developed in 2019 before COVID. Lots of things have changed since and because of COVID. Among other things, the assumptions about availability of housing, those assumptions will change because as a consequence of COVID and increased remote work, there will be a significant decline in demand for office buildings and hotels, and the commentators are saying that office buildings and hotels are going to be repurposed into housing, which, by the way, might actually help the problem that we're all concerned about. Secondly, with respect to the impact of COVID, because there's such a significant transformation to remote work, you're going to have a lot less transit. There's an Ernst & Young study that was commissioned by the Greater Washington Partnership that actually studies all of these issues, and I think that in that study they say that the impact on transportation is going to be significant because the amount of commuters, which is a big source of income for the transit systems, that source of income is going to continually to go down. We know that Metro, as part of its contingency planning for these financial changes, has picked the Cleveland Park Metro Station, as at the top of its list of targets to close in order to address its financial contingencies.
10 seconds.
So if we have significant increased density and we lose the Cleveland Park Station, we have a planning disaster. So I guess to sum it up, my suggestion is that the ANC should review these issues in the context of what the situation is now following COVID. So That would be the point I
Thank
would
you,
make.
Jerry. Thank you.
Anne Loykow, there are two Anns. There's one Anne and one Anne's iPhone. Is Anne Loykow here? And if you are, can you either raise your hand or type in the chat if you're Anne Loykow and you wish to speak. Okay, well, we might come back to Anne. Ryan Keefe, let me find you.
Mr. Harry Martin emailed me and said that others have covered his points already and he is not going to speak.
Okay, thank you. Ryan Keefe, I'm asking you to unmute.
All right. All right. Hi, guys. I'll just say simply, I support this resolution. It is critical to providing some sort of relief for housing prices in this neighborhood and the city in general. All of these conversations we're having at the neighborhood level, but really this is frankly a citywide and a region-wide discussion. These comp plan amendments are the first attempt since the zoning code was introduced in the District of Columbia to actually provide an upzoning in Ward 3. We have had 90 years of failed policies on development by shrinking over and over what is possible in the district, what is possible in Cleveland Park, and what is possible in Ward 3. This is a first step in correcting some of those wrongs that were racially motivated and we just need to pass this. It is critical. Thank you to the commissioners who will support this. Thank you to Commissioner Finley. And I just please pass this.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thomas Nimmo, you have your hand up, so I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yes, good evening. My name's Thomas Nimmo. So my family has lived here in Cleveland Park for 7 years. And like other people have spoken, we see this as, really a tipping point. We have been working for the past year from our 1-bedroom apartment and can only dream of eventually upgrading to, perhaps a condo we could own. And it's very disappointing to hear so many people reflexively oppose this measure when it would, really help the people who have been renting for much of their lives and have no real chance to, be able to purchase what is now a multi-million-dollar property for anything that is not, a 2-bedroom condo. So I just hope that people would, consider their position on housing based on, where they have been in life and, what other people in their community are experiencing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Claire Block, I'm asking you to unmute. Oh. Claire, can you, are you able to unmute?
Okay, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Hi. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to the commissioners for all their work on this. I support this amendment to the comp plan. I think that what isn't ever acknowledged by the people who oppose projects in Cleveland Park is that change is good for a neighborhood. Change is essential for a neighborhood. Without it, things fail. I feel like the Cleveland Park corridor has failed. I've lived here for 27 years in Cleveland Park. I've owned 2 houses in Cleveland Park. I don't know why people have been fighting, why people fought changes to the Giant, why people fought changes to, the bringing the homeless shelter in, that it might bring more kids to the, John Eaton school who aren't from here. And I feel like there's kind of a kind of ickiness sometimes about the desire to not change and to keep everyone here just the same, So anyway, I support this because it's one step in the right direction. So thanks.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Claire. And Robin, I saw in the chat that you didn't want to speak. If you did want to speak, you can just message me again, but I'm going to go to the next person on the list in the interest of time. Bob Ward.
Thanks. I support the proposal for a number of reasons: sustainability, economic vitality, increasing accessibility and equity. I would support it for any one of those reasons, but you have my written comments on those issues. I'd like to address tonight the practical reality of our dual regulatory framework that faces any future development in Cleveland, in the area, if the council approves the change. I mean, for better or for worse, depending on your point of view, any project here needs to be compatible with the historic district. And I think that's what Mr. Matthew was saying. And this is governed by the DC Preservation Act, not the comprehensive plan, and it's enforced by the Historic Preservation Review Board. I mean, if you recall the Macklin project, which was only allowed 80% of its allowable density because of historic preservation concerns. As a result, 1,600 square feet of potential affordable housing was not realized. My point is that zoning did not impose this cap. Historic preservation did. Unfettered maximum development up and down the commercial area may be a talking point, but it's just not based in reality. Every site is different. They will have their individual hurdles or opportunities when viewed through the lens of historic preservation, but I'm hopeful we'll have opportunities for greater density, and we should welcome them. But they will be required to be compatible. I mean, say if we have the good fortune of attracting a nonprofit developer with public funding who can deliver more affordability, deeper affordability, more family-sized units. Such a case may even warrant special merit and flexibility in design review. Why close the door on that by not allowing greater density? Support this resolution. Allow for future planning, creative investment, and future residents to guide the process of growth should it come to Cleveland Park, and I hope it does. Thanks.
Thank you.
Liza Collery, are you by any chance one of the participants named Elizabeth? If so, please raise your hand or type in the chat so I can find you. If not, okay, great. And then we have an option to speak. We have one more. Oh, I see Elizabeth now. Here we go. Go ahead, Liza.
Hi, I'm trying to unmute. You hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, I'm Liza Collery. I live in a historic home on Newark Street, and I'm strongly in favor of allowing these amendments. When I was listening to Commissioner Finley speak, it occurred to me that this is one of those instances where what is good for Cleveland Park is also good for the District of Columbia and is good for the planet as a whole. We need more people living in Cleveland Park to support our commercial district. During the time that I have lived here, I have seen it steadily decline, and it needs a shot in the arm, and allowing some greater density on Connecticut Avenue and some more apartments to allow more residents to live here is essential to propping up our really struggling commercial district. But in addition to being good for Cleveland Park, it's also going to be good for the District of Columbia, which needs more housing. Ward 3 should do its share in providing housing for what has been a burgeoning city. And of course, it's also good for the planet to put your development where there's public transportation, which gets me to the point about the metro. Another commenter suggested that it would be a public planning catastrophe to allow some apartments to be built on Connecticut Avenue when there's now talk about closing our metro. But I think that what would be the public planning catastrophe would be to build a metro, and I can hardly imagine how much it costs to create a metro station, and then to close it down because some neighbors oppose allowing apartments to be constructed in an area that now has 1 or 2-story buildings. That's the public planning catastrophe. So, Cleveland Park accepted a metro station, and now it's time to allow some of the development and housing that goes along with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liza. Anne Loikow, you can go next.
Hi, I'm sorry, I couldn't figure out how to get unmuted when you first called me.
That's okay.
I've lived in Cleveland Park for over 40 years, and I was one of those federal employees who didn't have a whole lot of money. And when we found our house, we kept thinking it was the one across the street because everything that we thought we could afford was always kind of weird or had some kind of funny things in it. People who like us who bought have had to do a lot of things to fix up our house over the years because it was had a lot of issues. But what I wanted to say is, I know a large part of this is pushing for the idea of affordable housing. And I think, as Rick Nash mentioned, there's a lot of new housing being built in the immediate vicinity, whether it's over at Fannie Mae or going to be down in Woodley Park or farther up Connecticut Avenue. And I think people miss something I learned as an ANC commissioner when I was representing the West End back in the 70s, which is the real affordable housing is the older housing, whether they're older apartment buildings or they're older houses that need to be preserved, upgraded to the extent that's needed to keep them going. But those are the places where you're going to have rents and sales prices that younger people and people without a lot of money can afford to buy or to rent. One of the things I was involved in a lot while I was an ANC commissioner was organizing tenants associations, because in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a big push to demolish housing all over downtown, and to put in office buildings, apartment hotels, and all the rest. And we managed, in fact, I also worked with Phil a little bit on McLean Gardens. We managed to save a lot of those projects, and those are some of the more moderate or middle class housing that's still left. And so I would urge you not to think that brand new big buildings are going to bring you affordable housing, because they're not. It's going to be the preservation of your older housing and your older apartment buildings. And for that, I think you don't want to change the historic district, and you don't want to change the density. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Commissioner Finley, I believe we're done with the list, and I don't see anyone else's hand up.
Okay, let's give everybody about 30 more seconds to, or 15 more seconds to try to figure out how to raise their hand. If they can't figure it out, they can type in the chat that they'd like to speak. And we've got
we have somebody in the chat that wants to speak.
Okay, WB and numbers, I am getting to you. And I'm asking you to unmute. Please unmute yourself, and then you can speak.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to raise my hand on the Zoom.
No worries.
Hi, thanks very much, Nikki. Hi, my name is Susan Wong, and I live in Cleveland Park, and my family and I have lived here for over 17 years. And we used to live in Woodley Park, Georgetown, Roslyn. The reason we bought a house in this neighborhood is because we love the historical nature of the neighborhood. So I'm against the proposed amendment, and I really very much appreciate the debate that's going on in our community. I think it's a good debate, and I've learned quite a bit from it. But I'm against the proposed amendment for several reasons. First, the extreme zoning and high density does not necessarily mean affordable housing, as the previous speaker just said. You just look at some of the recent condo units near Porter in Connecticut, where I used to live. Okay, second, building high density won't necessarily lead to businesses flourishing. My family owns restaurants, we run restaurants, and I can assure you that more foot traffic doesn't necessarily lead to profitable businesses. That's simply a false argument. But just look at Roslyn, Friendship Heights, and even Van Ness. My third question for the ANC is, and this is my first meeting, so thank you for having us. I'd really appreciate discussion at this meeting of what are the next steps we need to take for the community voices to be heard. I also agree with the earlier commissioner that I felt this issue was a bit rushed. It's not coming at a good time with COVID, and I'd like to hear the process of how the community's voices can be heard in a better way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Commissioner Finley, like your 15 seconds. And Alex R.
Oh, Alex R. Okay, in the chat. Yes. So
please go ahead. I'm asking you to unmute.
Hi, thanks. My name's Alex. I moved to Cleveland Park just within the last year, so I'm a relative newcomer here. But I mean, really love the neighborhood. and appreciate all the rich discussion about this. This is my first time being involved in local politics like this, so it's also really inspiring to see. I just wanted to weigh in on some of the affordable housing conversation. As I mentioned in the chat, I think that's an important conversation to have, and we should have an inclusive conversation about how the best ways are to encourage more affordable housing. I just think that we can't get to that point if we impulsively or reflexively reject smart growth plans to change density restrictions like this, because then really no new housing is going to be built in this area. We don't even have the opportunity to attract that kind of affordable housing. I've also, as just in my last year in the neighborhood, witnessed kind of an exodus of businesses. I realize it's COVID and that's part of it, but it does seem like the businesses that are coming in are not nearly as vibrant as the ones that are leaving. And I just worry if we're not kind of revitalizing the neighborhood with a forward-thinking plan like this, we're going to continue to lose businesses. It's going to become a less attractive place for people to live in the future. And that just concerns me as a resident of the neighborhood. So thanks for the opportunity to speak and participate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Justin Archer, I'm asking you to unmute so you can go ahead.
I'll even turn my video on. Yeah. So yeah, I live in the Connecticut Park Apartments on Connecticut, and I think what I want to contribute to the discussion is that basically, I think what's important to consider is like, what does everyone want the community to look like moving forward, like in terms of the makeup. So in my building, my direct neighbors next to us, they just bought a house up in Tacoma and they moved there this month. The neighbors next to them moved over to a neighbor yard because they want to start a family. Our neighbors directly across the hall also want to start a family. They are planning on moving. We have 2 young kids and we're looking to move. And like Cleveland Park, Woodley Park are just, they're not reasonably affordable communities for any of us to look in right now as young, not even young, like 30-year-old professionals here in DC. So if you want to have a community that it doesn't have like that has a donut hole of younger people growing up raising families, then restricting these kinds of housing, like restricting this policy, I think would do that. If you want to see us remain in the neighborhood, then increasing the housing stock and decreasing pressure, not only within just this development, but in the rest of the neighborhood, kind of trying to keep prices a little bit more limited, I think would really help us kind of consider this neighborhood long-term. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And Ike Yilmaz, I'm asking you to unmute now.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks. I live on Garfield Street in Woodley Park, and I'm in support of the resolution. I only read it a couple of days ago, and I was actually a little bit depressed by all the other hurdles that are mentioned in the resolution that clearly need to be, need to jump over in order to actually get any development done in Cleveland Park, even if we approve the future land use amendment. Like getting past the historical review, making sure it goes through a neighborhood approval process, and all the other things that are going to be difficult. But I agree with what everyone else said, that the change is needed to keep the community vibrant. I've been living here for about 2 years, but I remember visiting Cleveland Park almost 20 years ago when I started college, and it was a really vibrant area. There was a lot of buzz about the restaurants and the nightlife in the area. I kind of walk past those same streets and just look at the graying buildings and kind of think, what happened to this place? And now I'm living in now I'm trying to like figure out how anyone kind of can afford here or talk about housing costs and rent like it's not an issue, because I think anyone who pays that is struggling in the area and can really agree with what people have said about the struggles of trying to get any sort of reasonable room. I mean, we're not talking about single family houses here. We're just talking about having even 2 bedrooms at an affordable price in this neighborhood. So I think more housing is needed, and I just
10
want to
seconds.
express my support for the resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Finley, I don't see any more hands raised, and it's
And we're
almost-
also on the 43 minutes.
Yep.
Well, yeah, well, we've got, yes. Is there anybody else who would like to be heard this evening? All right, we've got former Commissioner Dubois, and so, Swale, I didn't steal your line well, but
okay.
You're unmuted.
Hi, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I just, as Commissioner Finley mentioned, for those who don't know me, I am a former commissioner. I've been off the commission for all of 1.5 meetings now. But I did want to say, I really, just as a member of the community, urge you guys to support this tonight. We've heard a lot of background on why, if you're concerned about environmental issues, if you're concerned about public house or affordable housing or public housing, that this one single policy will not single-handedly solve once and for all of those problems. But I don't think anyone's contending that. I think the point is that it's a step in the right direction. This is not going to stop global warming. It's not going to end the affordability crisis in housing. But not doing it will further exacerbate those things. So please don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good here. And just do, I mean, this is pretty close to the least this neighborhood can do. Is just saying that we will in the future consider maybe allowing more housing here. And if we're not even willing to do that, then we really aren't willing to put our money where our mouth is on either climate change or affordable housing. So please do support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Casey, I'm asking you to unmute.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to give people a few stats. I just took the liberty of pulling up a little bit of statistics since people are talking about housing prices in the area. And so for the last 10 years, and I just posted some charts and gave a link if people want to see the charts themselves. But in the last 10 years, the price of detached homes in Cleveland Park have gone from an average of 1.33 million to 2.04 million. For townhouses, they've gone from 880,000 to 1.44 million on average. And then for condos, they've gone up about 100,000 from around 350 to 450. This is just on average. So if you think that prices haven't been going up, they absolutely have. And I can tell you as a real estate agent in this area, it is just absurd. The amount of demand that is out there and how many people are not getting satisfied. Having developers have the opportunity to develop slightly larger places, 2 or 3 bedroom in particular, should really be encouraged. It's just really needed to keep it in there. Anyway, I just pulled the data, so feel free to look at it.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Stuart, I'm asking you to unmute.
Thank you. I want to go back to what Mark Rosenman said earlier. I think there's a lot to commend for affordable housing and for dealing with climate change. The idea that this proposal would meaningfully affect any of that, I think is foolish. And it is offensive to use racial, social, economic, and climate justifications for doing this. You know, I've lived here in Cleveland Park since '92, in North Cleveland Park since '75. Connecticut Avenue is filled with large apartment houses, going all the way up to Chevy Chase and going down to DuPont Circle and beyond. I think that these goals do not have to be met at the expense of historic preservation of a historic neighborhood. You're talking about 4 blocks on Connecticut Avenue on the commercial strip, as though somehow that was going to help with global problems in society. I think that there's a lot that can be done for affordable housing. There's a lot that can be done for sustainability, it shouldn't be done by weakening the historic preservation language as it's written in this proposal. And there's a danger here of killing the goose that laid the golden egg. Everybody wants to live here. It's very expensive. There are a lot of expensive neighborhoods in Washington, and there are a lot of inexpensive neighborhoods. It's hard to justify developing up this commercial strip beyond a moderate degree based on these kinds of justifications. I think it will.
10 seconds.
All right, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have anybody else?
Are we back to commissioners?
Almost. I want to make sure that I think so.
Hey, Bo, do you want to let Director Trueblood speak?
Yes. I thank you for the reminder, Jason. Director Trueblood, would you care to address your captive audience?
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask me to unmute myself. Thank you all. Thanks, Commissioner Finley and all of the commissioners, and thanks for everyone who's here. I see 174 people, which is about what it was about an hour and 45 minutes ago, if not more. So I'm really excited by the amount of engagement tonight. And hopefully I have some thoughts here, some comments that I think I can have some answers to questions that were raised. First, I want to thank you all for having me back here to ANC 3C in Cleveland Park. As Commissioner Finley said, I and my colleagues have been here a few times since we released the draft comp plan proposal about 16 months ago in, October of 2019. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to support the mayor's comp plan proposal, which was transmitted to council in April 2020 and had a hearing in November. I will note that we continue to encourage the DC Council to pass it prior to their budget work this April, to ensure that DC is optimally positioned to tackle the economic, equity, and climate challenges we face, many of which have been exacerbated by COVID-19, and all of which are addressed in the comp plan. The comp plan proposal makes important updates to help us address the challenges that the current document, which was originally passed in 2006, is not set up to do, and many of which they didn't even fathom. OP has provided general background about the comp plan in previous appearances. Commissioner Finley mentioned more, and you can spend 5 minutes or 5 years learning more at the website plandc.dc.gov, including maps that are interactive and all sorts of information. Tonight, I want to focus on the Amendment 2123 to the future land use map. You all know what it says, so I'm not going to go through this, but I will just note, I think there's some confusion. It's going from low density to commercial to a mix of moderate density commercial and high density residential. It's worth noting that high density residential is anticipated, is meant to be up to 90 feet. So this is not high density commercial, the kind of things that you would see downtown. I'll get to that in a minute. This change, I think we've heard the term upflum is maybe what it would be called. It helps illustrate our approach to updating the comp plan and how we envision it as a tool to effectuate the positive change we seek. Before talking about these 3 blocks in DC and the important local context in which they lie, I want to provide a perspective on why we need a comprehensive plan. A fundamental reality that underlies planning and all the work we do is that change in cities is a constant process. The universe is expanding towards chaos. The Earth's tectonic plates are always moving, and each of us ages every day. While modern humans have found incredible ways of ordering and controlling this chaos, we also have set off other systems of change, such as global warming, at an unprecedented pace. The comp plan is just a small effort to acknowledge that there is change in the world and in our city. It is an effort to harness and direct that inevitable change towards a positive future for us today, but also, as importantly, for our children and grandchildren. As we updated the comp plan, we recognize that some of the key external drivers of change are inequality, housing, climate change, and economic challenges. While the District of Columbia government does not affect any of these factors, we do not control growth. The comp plan can be a tool to address them through the things that we can control, such as land use and local policies. That is where the comp plan comes in, and it can help ensure that we are prepared for the changes that are likely to occur at the regional, national, and global scales. If not updated correctly or with diligent speed, it can also, as it has in the past, exacerbate issues like inequity by not supporting the district's need to accommodate these forces. The comp plan can also help guide how we balance these forces of change against important against the importance of supporting and preserving aspects of our cities, such as historic buildings, cultural heritage, and supporting historically marginalized communities. A common misunderstanding about the comp plan is what exactly it is and what exactly it is not. The comp plan is a high-level plan that serves as a critical opportunity to take a step back and envision a positive long-term future. It is not a self-effectuating law. It is not zoning. It is not historic preservation review. It cannot, in and of itself, create budgets, programs, laws, buildings. It cannot even change laws or zoning. Instead, it is a guide for residents, policymakers, and other stakeholders. And while it cannot change zoning, which is something only the Independent Zoning Commission can do through a public process, any decisions the Zoning Commission makes cannot be inconsistent with the comp plan. This explicit connection is why land use is such a critical component of the comp plan and its update. On the topic of growth, I've heard suggestions that the district or neighborhoods cannot or should not accommodate growth. It is worth noting that our city has 712,000 residents now and is growing, but had over 800,000 residents in 1950. While our household and housing characteristics have changed since then, our analysis shows that there are plenty of ways to accommodate growth in every part of the city for the next generation and beyond. That being said, if growth patterns change and we do not grow as quickly or at all, then development and housing will not be needed and not happen. In other words, the comp plan does not require growth, but if we are to reach our shared goals around jobs, equity, resilience, and vibrancy, it must be able to accommodate it. Let me walk through some examples of the connection between these realities of change and land use that all contributed to OP's support of this FLUM amendment. This amendment is an important step towards addressing climate change and reducing carbon footprint and greenhouse gases. Given all available indications that regional and local population growth will continue even after COVID, growing densely is the most carbon efficient way to grow. It minimizes the need for polluting transportation in favor of walking, biking, and mass transportation, and it takes advantage of more efficient buildings and housing. This is one reason why the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, or COG, has a goal of producing 75% of new housing units between 2020 and 2030 in areas near transit or jobs. In addition, if there is growth pressure, but the comp plan prevents it, then new growth would have to be somewhere else. In the case of Metropolitan Washington, that has usually meant sprawl, thereby paving over green fields, producing far higher carbon impacts, far from job centers, and far higher transportation costs, especially for low-income communities. So this proposal is one active step towards addressing the climate crisis. Given the external factor of population growth, producing more housing is a prerequisite for stabilizing rents and addressing affordability. That is why the mayor has been clear on her commitment to produce more housing through her goal of 36,000 new housing units by 2025. This is not only straightforward supply and demand, but it has also been backed up by numerous studies. Displacement pressure and price increases are caused by increased demand for housing. Building more does not cause price increases, but is rather a result of this underlying dynamic and demand. Preventing the creation of more housing simply funnels that demand into existing supply, causing the price of housing in established neighborhoods to go up and increasing displacement pressures. In short, this proposal is an active step towards addressing the housing crisis. Producing more housing is also a prerequisite for producing more affordable or subsidized housing. I have not heard anyone argue that more housing by itself is sufficient to create affordable housing, and is not something that I would ever argue. We need to both produce more housing and provide resources for affordable housing, because affordable housing is as much a function of budget as it is of land use. Which is why, as part of the mayor's 36,000 unit housing goal, she also set a goal of 12,000 affordable housing units. It is why the mayor has dedicated over $100 million a year to affordable housing since taking office, more than any other city per capita by orders of magnitude. So I welcome everyone here to join us to continue to advocate for the resources we need at the local and the federal level for affordable housing. But when it comes to land use, it is actually pretty simple. Opposing the opportunity to create more housing is opposing more affordable housing production. In short, this proposal is an active step towards addressing housing affordability through land use. As it relates to Ward 3, or the planning area known as Rock Creek West in the comp plan, it is important to recognize that when thinking about equity, we cannot just talk about more housing and more affordable housing, but also have to talk about where that housing is. The mayor asked us to take the 12,000 unit goal and determine where these units should be built by neighborhood to achieve equity. When we asked residents what they thought about the current distribution of housing, 75% of respondents said that the current distribution is not even and not equitable. In many places, including Rock Creek West, we found that much of our city's segregation historically has been caused by racially motivated policies, both explicit and implicit. They include not only racial covenants, but also severe restrictions on housing and density that our district's land use configuration continues to reflect, including in the comp plan FLUM that is in effect today and needs updating. In October of 2019, we used this information to release the Mayor's Housing Equity Report, which can be found at housing.dc.gov. The report sets goals by planning area and informed the comp plan's housing element. It recommends that this planning area, Rock Creek West, produce 1,990 more affordable units by 2025. I want to be clear, that's affordable units. That's income restricted affordable units in order to move our city towards more equitable housing distribution. So far, Rock Creek West is the only planning area in the district, and there are 10, with no affordable housing production in that time, 0 units.
No.
There are only so many ways to get more housing in the district, and especially in Rock Creek West. But it is the changes that we proposed making in the FLUM that can really make a difference over this next generation. We calculate that all of the FLUM changes across the city allow for 15% more potential density than the current document, which is a meaningful amount for an update. In short, this proposal is an active step towards providing more housing in high opportunity areas and to build a more equitable city. Now I'd like to talk specifically about these 3 blocks. We accepted this proposed amendment because we saw this area has a number of critical assets, including public transit access, easy access to jobs and amenities, and the opportunity for additional housing. In addition, we recognize the additional housing can support the housing equity goal, as well as support retail through patrons that live within a walkable distance. In short, it helps move the neighborhood, ward, and district toward all of these goals I just discussed. I've heard some questions and confusion in the community about the proposal. First, I would like to note that the striping aligns with land use designations just north of this, and therefore the heights and historic context nearby. Under the proposal, there would be no practical way for a building to be taller than 90 feet. Second, it is important to restate that the FLUM is not zoning, and changes to the FLUM do not automatically produce zone changes. To take advantage of the additional density, applicants would go through the zoning commission through one of 2 processes. If a property owner seeks an upzoning or a map amendment, they would be subject to the higher percentage of affordable housing under the soon to be finalized IZ Plus program. That's up to 20%. If an owner seeks to take advantage of a planned unit development, they will have to make even more robust engagement, design, and community benefits goals. Both map amendment and PUD approaches require a public hearing where advisory neighborhood commission's testimony is given great weight in decisions made by the zoning commission. Finally, this proposal does nothing to change the historic district or required reviews by the Historic Preservation Review Board or HPRB. Such reviews will ensure any proposal fits within the context of the historic district. As we engage with the community around the comp plan, we discussed opportunities, including in this area, to create gentle density for housing that complements historical forms and maybe even makes the historic district stronger and better while producing housing. In other words, historic preservation speaks to the design and the aesthetics and the complementarity of buildings, which can affect density, but each development is reviewed case by case by each development is a reviewed case by the HPRB, and neither the future land use map nor the comp plan can change their authorities or their project level reviews. I will wrap up where I started, with the inevitability of change and the important role of the comp plan. Once we accept that the universe, the world, the country, the region, the city, the ward, and yes, the neighborhood are changing, the question is not whether to change, but rather how to change for the better. I believe this proposal is a thoughtful, common sense answer to that question. I hope I have answered questions and addressed concerns this evening, but if you have outstanding questions about the comp plan, you can email plandc@dc.gov or visit the website at plandc.dc.gov. I will note that the comp plan is currently before council, so we're not changing it right now. So if you have feedback for the council, you can contact council members. As it relates to this proposal, I cannot think of a better example of a small but important change to get us to this positive future. This, along with the additional proposed FLUM updates across the district, will help us work together to positively address the critical needs of today as well as those of tomorrow. I hope ANC 3C will agree. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Director Trueblood, and thank you for taking time to talk to us this evening. Sorry we couldn't have you speak before the community forum, but hopefully we're now ready to move to discussion among commissioners about the resolution? Commissioner McWood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where to start? I've been writing down notes. I probably should have written something out ahead of time, but I wanted to hear what people in the community said. I did read all the emails. I responded to people in my SMD. I want to correct one thing that I think I heard Director Trueblood say, because it's something I have heard before. And I don't know why it keeps getting repeated, and I hope I misheard him. And I'm glad he's still here because he can say. I believe he just said that in our ANC area, we have not produced any affordable housing units. And I'd like to correct that. Cathedral Commons has 13 units. Fannie Mae Development has almost 70. 4,000 Wisconsin will also have almost 70. And I think it's important to also state that ANC 3C appealed to the Office of Planning to insist that both of those last two, Fannie Mae and 4,000 Wisconsin, have more affordable housing when it was going through large tract review.
Thank you, Commissioner. One thing worth noting is large tract review can't produce affordable housing.
It's advisory.
So to be clear, my numbers. I'm sorry. Can I was muted. All right. Okay. Sorry. So my numbers, when I talk about the zero, it is for looking at that 12,000. So it's every unit that's been delivered between 2018, I believe, and now. So we can. I'm happy. There's a dashboard. I'll put it in the chat, and you can take a look at it. Okay. But it's not looking necessarily at the pipeline or at what's been delivered before then. It's just of that 12,000, what has been delivered to date.
Okay, well, that's a very small window, and that's misleading because we have produced some units. We could still produce more, but I just wanted to clarify that. But back to the resolution. Like Commissioner Gersten, I am not going to support this resolution. I don't consider it a small change. I consider it a very large change. But there are a couple of things that were mentioned by residents that I wanted to touch on because I think they're important. And in no particular order, and this will seem very disjuncted because I've just got these wild notes written down on a couple of pieces of paper. One is the map amendment process. If this density increase gets approved, any building owner can go to the zoning commission and request through a regulatory process that the zoning be changed so that it is no longer inconsistent with what the new high density designation is. There are no parties to that process. It's a rulemaking. It is not a contested case. The only standard of review for the zoning commission is whether it is not inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. The other process that the director mentioned is somebody could go in and say, okay, I want the landowner, I want my map amendment, and at the same time, I want a PUD to give me even more density, another 20% density increase. In that situation, there are parties, it is a contested case, but the amount of this IZ plus proposal that is now going through, that was also mentioned, that is now being considered by the zoning commission, that would change the requirement right now, which in Cleveland Park is 8%. 8% of the new residential square footage is set aside for affordable housing. That is so minimal as to almost be a joke. I mean, it should outrage anyone who cares about affordable housing in Cleveland Park or any part of the city that we are still only requiring 8 to 10%. And what it translates here, because of the way the construction methods that are used here, is 8%. The IZ Plus would up that to a maximum of 20%. That, to my mind, is what we should have required 10 years ago, easily. But if somebody goes in and gets and says, and this is the way IZ Plus is currently structured, going through the zoning commission, if they go in and say, I want my map amendment, and at the same time I want a PUD, IZ Plus doesn't apply. It doesn't extend to that. So we're back to 8 to 10%, unless there is some leverage during the PUD process that requires something greater than that. I don't think we should be satisfied with that. I think it is a huge mistake to give this extreme density designation to our entire commercial area without a really progressive affordable housing law in place. The IZ program has got to be reformed. Doing this tinkering with it, IZ Plus, is not adequate. So that is one of the reasons why I can't support this proposal. Another thing I wanted to touch on, and I somewhat already have, but a number of people, and particularly in the emails that we've received, have really stressed affordable housing, that we need more affordable housing in Cleveland Park. This one proposal is not going to change the affordability situation in Cleveland Park. That is a much larger issue. All this proposal is going to do is say, we're going to build 80 to 90, we're going to authorize 80 to 90% market rate housing, the very expensive housing that everyone says they don't want, that everyone says we have too much of, that has been linked to displacing over 40,000 Black residents from the district, that currently the effective rent for all of these Class A apartments, according to the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, is almost $2,400 a month. We're going to say we're going to support building 80 to 90% of the new housing and have it be market rate housing. I don't get it. People say they want family-sized units. There's no requirement for family-sized units unless we reform the inclusionary zoning law and require that there be family-sized units. There is just, we are doing this backwards. The Office of Planning is also talking about having a planning process. The planning process would be after the density bonus. It's backwards. You do your planning first, and then you decide what the density bonus would be. We have 18, as of December, 18% vacancy rates in our Class A apartments. We are in a pandemic. It is not inconsequential. We have no idea when it's going to end. We have no idea what the short-term or the long-term impacts are going to be. It just seems to me irresponsible that we're going to take a low-density historic district and we're going to say, okay, we're going to bump it up 3 levels. Yes, that's extraordinary. Yes, that's probably unprecedented. We've never done it before, but we're going to do it. And we don't care that there's a pandemic. We don't care that there are people leaving the city. We don't care that we've got an affordable housing crisis. We don't care that it's really not going to translate into very much affordable housing. And if we waited, maybe we could get a whole lot more. We're going to do this anyway. It just does not. It doesn't make any sense to me. And the notion that we're going to somehow approve this, knowing that it's practically like licking a stamp to go and get the zoning changed at the zoning commission. that we're going to rely on the Historic Preservation Review Board to somehow right size the density. I mean, really, if anybody believes that, I've got a dry well to sell you, because it just, we're too smart for that. I mean, you know, the other thing that I think Rick Nash pointed out is that there's been a requirement in the Historic Preservation Plan, and frankly, it's also in the comprehensive plan for years, that in historic districts, what is on the ground, what's built on the ground, that the zoning should be compatible with that it should be consistent with that. And that's what the Historic Preservation Board has been dealing with. They have been dealing with zoning laws that generally are very consistent with what is in a historic district. So there hasn't been tension. There hasn't been a lot of tension between zoning and historic preservation. In this case, you're going to take a low density historic district and you're going to increase it 3 levels to the absolute highest density imaginable in a neighborhood. Highest density, wasn't even allowed a few years ago. 90 feet plus 20 feet of penthouse on top of that. And you're going to say to the HPRB, could you please figure this out for us? We didn't mean to do this. We know it's an historic district. We know you've never had to confront this before because zoning and the actual built environment have been similar. I think that's asking too much. And I don't think that's what we really want. I think what we want is some more density. No one's been able to actually say what would be the appropriate density. The Office of Planning just told us it was going to be high. I mean, where did that come from? It's just unprecedented. And people say that they want more vitality. Every neighborhood retail area in the city, if not the country, is suffering. There is a crisis. I don't know that anyone has figured it out. Some more density may be part of the answer, but I don't think it's that simple. I really don't think it's that simple. And I think it would be a huge mistake, and I feel it would be totally irresponsible of me as an SMD commissioner representing the historic district and knowing what I know about the government processes to support this amendment. I just think we can do better, and I think we're not really exploring the changes that we need, like the reform of IC, which many of us have been trying to get for years. I don't think we're putting our energy and our passion into the right pathways. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McWood. Just I saw a question in the chat. Commissioners are not limited to 2 minutes. That was for the community forum. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other commissioners who would like to speak?
I'd like to say something, if I could.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gershman.
I'd sort of like to echo what Nancy said and ask, you know, why at this point are we going from 0 to 60? Why not consider something more reasonable that's in the middle, such as moderate density residential? You know, the idea that this designation only allows for the possibility of high density is really just disingenuous.
It is.
I mean, I have this big, huge shovel and I'm gonna only collect a tiny little bit of sand, I promise. I mean, that doesn't ring true. High density designation is gonna lead to high density, and that will not equate to affordable housing. I think that's just the reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gersten. Any other commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Reba.
Thank you. Well, I'll try and be as eloquent as those that have gone before me. I really feel that this is a conversation we should have had before the resolution was introduced 5 days ago. So many, if not all of these comments and suggestions could have been incorporated. To me, that would have been true community engagement and inclusion. This has been a very healthy and heartwarming conversation for me, and I hope it's been the same for everybody joining us this evening. Whether we agree or not agree, and whether this resolution includes all that we would want it to be from both sides, this has really been an incredible conversation and an incredible community gathering. You know, my feelings aren't lost to Chair Finley, because we spoke about an hour the other night. And for that, I want to thank him for reaching out and taking the time to speak with me. And when I spoke with the chair, I shared with him not to rush this, that this is the conversation we should have had all along. So again, so we could have incorporated many of the comments and suggestions brought for us this evening. You know, what's interesting and exciting is that there's so many new members to our Cleveland Park and Woodley Park family. Many don't know, but I'm a third generation Washingtonian. My grandparents lived up Connecticut Avenue. My mom owned a townhome off New Mexico Avenue, and I went to American University. And Cleveland Park was really a hub for me to hang out, as well as Friendship Heights. And I just wish others who are new to the community could have seen what a vibrant community Cleveland Park and Woodley Park was 5, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, without the density that many are seeking this evening. You know, Jamal's Park and Shop was a thriving shopping center in the early 90s. They had an Uno's Pizza. They had a great deli where you could get fresh bakery goods and bagels of all kinds with all the toppings and trimmings and locks that you could possibly want. And businesses were really thriving. You know, we have to identify where we are in the world today. You know, I have not seen any data supporting that high density equals sustainable businesses. You know, everybody's ordering online. They're getting their groceries in boxes. They're not really supporting local businesses. And this is pre-pandemic. It's just been magnified during the pandemic. You know, we really have to have another conversation and some possible investments in our businesses where our landlords are given incentives not to drive out our mom and pops. High density is not going to make a difference if landlords keep increasing the rent and pushing our mom and pops out. There's a part of me where, and I'll personalize it for a moment, there's a part of me that's kind of concerned that with all this new development, increased density, the landlords that are currently pushing people out are going to continue to want higher and higher and higher rents, because now we got density and now there's a customer base or alleged customer base, and now they can ask for more money because they think these businesses are making more money. But people haven't been shopping at brick and mortar for a number of years. And again, it's only been magnified during the pandemic. You know, to me, affordable housing, and I say that listening to tonight's conversation, affordable housing and increased density are two different conversations. You look at NoMo and Columbia Heights and H Street and the new development at Walter Reed. Where's the affordable housing? I myself would like to move. I own a condominium in Woodley Park, and I've been looking, and I'm on all the listservs for new housing. I can't afford any of them. 1 bedrooms are, you know, $600, 2 bedrooms are $850. I've not seen any affordable housing with any of these new developments. And Columbia Heights is a pretty good example of that. I agree with my colleagues and others who have said that we should have had the affordable housing conversation first and planned around that. And I'd be more inclined to support the resolution if I saw real tangible and comprehensive plans for affordable housing versus using affordable housing as buzzwords and sound bites to push the resolution. I'm a little, it's hard. My vote's going to be hard tonight because I've been watching the emails come in and messages coming in while we're gathered this evening. And my SMD is somewhat split. I have to admit, I'm getting a little more no's than I'm getting yeses, but I am getting yeses. But I'm also getting no's for the various reasons that we're discussing tonight, for various reasons that I'm sharing with you. And I have to agree about the 8 to 10% affordable housing. We've got to do better as a city. We've got to do better as a community. And we really, as the nation's capital, really should be the example for other cities and states to emulate. I just want to say that, again, Chair Finley, I want to thank you for your time and courtesy the other evening. I did really appreciate our conversation, and I appreciate you giving us a chance to speak and to hear one another. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reba, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me yesterday. Any other commissioners would like to speak?
Sure, I'll go next. So I also read every single email that we received. Thank you all so very much for your thoughtful comments. I received more in favor of this. I think a lot of what was commented on the folks out of my SMD was on the challenge that they have of wanting to stay in Cleveland Park, but not being able to afford to buy a family that they're going to be able to, grow in, because the housing stock's just not there. So to the comment of the demand isn't there, we've heard it on this call and we've seen it in the emails, and the supply is not there. So, and there seems to be a lot of assumptions based on COVID. The metro station is not going to close. That was WMATA's panicked federal government give us money threat. So I mean, I'm not saying it's definitely not going to close, but it's likely not going to be closed. The part about converting office buildings downtown into housing is a little bit harder than some people seem to make it sound. The floor plates are very big. A lot of renovation needs to happen to get to the code requirements for housing units. That's just challenging and expensive. So also the good part about increasing the density in this particular area is you're not displacing residents who already live there, because it is on a commercial strip. And what else have I written down here? Oh, Cleveland Park is a high opportunity community to, bring folks that have affordable housing needs into. So I'm in support of this amendment or this resolution based on the comments that I received and what I heard from everybody here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pagets. Commissioner Boucher texted me to let me know that that there's too much negative commentary in the chat, and that if I don't say something about it, she'll turn off the chat. So there we have it. So anyhow, do any other commissioners? So please keep it classy in the chat, folks. Does any other commissioners have something to say?
I will go, Chair Finley. Yes, again, thank you everyone who emailed. Thank you everyone who came here tonight to speak. Again, we know it's a divided issue, and but in reality, we really needed this, right? Like everyone is talking about how we needed it, and I think we've done at least really well today and with the emails to get a lot of input. I want to start with the comment about sort of this discussion being rushed. One of the things that I was doing before this, I was part of the CPCA, and I've been heavily involved in neighborhood issues for a while. Like Commissioner Finley mentioned, and others have mentioned, this first came up October 2019. The ANC 3C had its first meeting on it December 2019. That is over a year and 3 months ago. Since then, all our major community organizations, CPCA has had 2 meetings. One of the reasons I can mute and unmute people is because I practiced during those meetings. CPSG had multiple meetings. The Cleveland Park Historical Society had multiple meetings. All of those groups already sent in testimony to the commission, to the sort of council, excuse me. ANC 3C hasn't. And by reading the emails, I would say, yes, and I'll give you my numbers, but I would say that most people know which side they stand on in this. And I would be very open to like certain comments I'll make where I think is we can probably make some of these things better. But I think for the most part, our neighborhood knows where they stand. And so while it would always be great to have more time, the council is supposed to vote on this in less than a month. And it's better for our community to speak than not speak. The pandemic, so I'm a numbers person. We don't have any out-migration data yet, no explicit out-migration data at all. So if anyone says that we've lost people because in the last year, we don't have that data yet. We can look at indices about if people have moved out or not. Rental prices have gone down, home prices have gone up. Maybe the short-term residents have left. The longer-term residents are probably still here. This is probably the highest attended ANC meeting of the last 5 years, I would imagine. So I think that for the pandemic, it might go down, but I don't think it'll go down by a lot. And this is why I also don't think the pandemic is a necessarily stopping point for us. So why do I like this resolution? I like to think of this resolution as giving us options rather than making determination. Even if people who think that, we don't know what's going to happen and we don't, have any idea and we need data, then we should give ourselves the most options possible. We shouldn't try and restrict ourselves to not have options. Commissioner McWood pointed towards the, if we allow this, then essentially upzoning would be like licking a stamp and just appointing it. And I respect what she says. She knows more about the ANC and how all this works than I do. But I do believe this is the process of democracy, right? So we can either trust that the institutions we've made to check that future development is okay. Either we can trust them or we can't. And if we can't trust them to operate in the way we want them to operate, then that's a larger question that we need to answer. I, for one, have a huge confidence in the processes. Even the Macklin wasn't able to maximize their density that they could at that time. And so I can see our neighborhood just making really, really good decisions. So what do I want, right? Like, so first, I don't want 10 8-story buildings all over Connecticut Avenue. Not at all, right? And I think a number of people have provided options of why this is not going to happen, even if the land use changes. What I do want us to, is I want us to have options. And I've already made this clear on my post on the listserv as well. If there's ever a place where we would want to build an 8-story building, right now we can't have that discussion about our district, not about our business district. This will allow us to have that discussion. We had this discussion today because we were voting on this today. And so allowing us to have these discussions is very, very important. And so I think that's one of the reasons why, I'm voting for it, even though I am not someone I moved to Cleveland Park because I like the way the neighborhood feels. And so, no, I don't want 8-story buildings and those won't happen. But giving ourselves the option to make it happen is the least we can do, especially if we feel like we're faced with uncertainty. I actually agree with Commissioner McWood and Commissioner Reba, and I believe Commissioner Gersten touched on this too, that doing this just for affordable housing isn't the right reason. I don't think, I am under no apprehensions that this will create, large amounts of affordable housing and it'll solve sort of our affordable housing crisis. But it's a tool in the toolbox. But I do want to mention one more thing, which is we live in a neighborhood with multi-million-dollar homes, and those form the majority of the area where people live. I think it's interesting when I hear these conversations about like, well, we need homes for families that are at least 2 bedrooms, or we need homes that are certain affordability level, but not another affordability level. I think if we try and restrict ourselves with these metrics that we're trying to decide, I think it'll just result in no type of housing at all. You know, I mean, I live in my family lives in a 1-bedroom. I dare anyone to say that it's not a family. You know, and Commissioner Boucher would agree with me. I count my dog as part of my family. So it's, you know, it's not, families live in different places. People live in different types of homes. And us trying to say, like, trying to decide what specific type of person we want living in our neighborhood, that's when it becomes really, really edgy. And it's like, yeah, and Commissioner Boucher just agreed with me on the chat, right? Cleveland Park shouldn't just be for like, you know, who the people who are here right now, and then after this, it's only the families who can move in and certain other types of people. No, we should be welcoming everyone, be it people who live in studios, people who live in 1-bedrooms. You know, yeah, some people would love to live in an urban area and not have space, but be close to things. Others would want space. We need to find a way to make space for all of those people in our community. And I fear that if we don't make space for everyone, then there's really no way that we can say we're going to be an inclusive and diverse community. So that's also why I think this is more than affordable housing. Commissioner Reba said we should separate the conversation, and I agree. It's about moderate price housing. You know, like, it's not, are we just going to say that it's like, okay, for one particular level? No, absolutely not. I want to stay in Cleveland Park forever. And you know, and that's one of the reasons why I ran for ANC, and one of the reasons I really believe in this resolution and doing this. You know, of course, the one thing I'll say is I can have my ideas and I can have my opinions and I can look at the data. But at the end of the day, I'm an elected official, right? So what really counts is what constituents feel. Of all the emails I received, I counted them all up, and I looked at only people from 3C first. 54% voted yes, and 46% voted no. That's a slight majority. In my own single member district, 66% voted yes, and 33% voted no. This is, you know, and I know a lot of people will be surprised at those numbers. I was surprised at those numbers. I actually looked at it and I was like, okay, well, let me count it. Let me see what it really is, because I don't want to lie at the meeting, you know, or like misrepresent the meeting. And I think it's one thing to realize that this is, you know, and of course, you know, these are someone's asking, when did this voting happen? This was comments we received by emails. It's hard, you know, I understand what people are scared of. I'm not scared. And majority of my constituents aren't scared. And actually the majority of you aren't scared. So we need to sort of, you know, change the conversation around this and sort of understand that, like, this is just a small change. We will still have control as a community. And it's an important one that we should speak up about. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in here quickly as we're approaching 2.5 hours of the meeting and our participant numbers are declining here. I appreciate everyone sticking around, and we really appreciate all of the emails, the Zoom chats, and all of the commentary here tonight. It's very helpful. I'll be brief. I'm supporting this resolution tonight. I think, as former Commissioner Dubois summarized so well and so eloquently earlier, you know, this gives us options. This allows us to review potential solutions to some of the problems that our community faces and some of the challenges that we're rising to meet. So I think a vote opposing this resolution keeps the status quo. It keeps us where we are, and it does not move us forward. I am for change. I am for evolving, and again, in the sake of brevity, I am supporting the resolution tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoyt. I have a proposed amendment. I mean, I'm proposing it's a friendly amendment, but thanks to what Commissioner McWood stated about affordable housing and inclusionary zoning specifically. I'll read it. This will go as the second to last resolve clause. Be it further resolved that ANC 3C supports affordable housing and asks council to reform inclusionary zoning to prioritize family units so that our support of FLUM Amendment 2123 is grounded in support of affordable housing may come to full fruition. I'm open to amending that last bit, which I'm going to put in the chat because I've, working on language as we speak is not the easiest thing. So it's in the chat. And I'd like some help using the last bit to make sure it is clear that we want affordable housing and we support it. And we would like council to address the inclusionary zoning issues that Commissioner McWood raised.
Who offered that amendment?
I did.
Oh, it's your own amendment.
It's my own amendment.
I will commit that if this resolution doesn't fail, I will introduce something along those lines as a freestanding resolution next month.
Okay. Now, pardon me, I think because it's a friendly amendment, I do not need to seek approval, Commissioner McWood, is that correct?
Correct.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I've moved the amendment. It's been seconded. We've had discussion. Now we'll move to a vote. Commissioner Reba?
Chair, I'd like to use a stronger word than supports.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion?
Demands. Expects. I mean, anybody can support anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a relatively weak word for what we're trying to seek.
I like demands.
Demands?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Braces?
Thank you.
Underwrites? Commissioner Hoyt? Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Commissioner Reba. So we'll change, and Commissioner Baggett's, we'll change that to demands. And I'll paste it again for our administrator. Great. Okay, now we move to vote on the resolution. Yes, Commissioner McWood.
It's not the council, it would be the zoning commission.
Thank you. I thought for inclusionary zoning to be reformed, it would have to be done by council.
No, it's the zoning commission.
Okay. Okay, so we'll change council zoning commission, Rachel, in the minutes. Thank you, Commissioner McWood. Rachel, could you call roll call vote?
Yes, and is this on the friendly amendment or no, because you accepted it, it's on the whole thing. Okay.
Yes.
I just want to have the clarification.
Sure thing, thank you.
Let me get everybody's names and then I'll start. Okay, Commissioner Reba.
Well, I know there's no conversation. I'm just going to indulge me for 1 second. But again, I really do wish this was a conversation we had before the resolution was introduced 5 days ago. Tonight, I'll be voting on behalf of my constituents who have spoken, and I will be supporting the resolution.
Commissioner Fink.
Commissioner Fink, are you there? Okay, we'll come back to Commissioner Fink, I guess.
I'm here. I was muted.
Okay.
Sorry, I strongly support the resolution.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Fink.
Commissioner Pagets.
I support the resolution.
Commissioner Finley,
Yes.
Commissioner Siddiqui,
I support the resolution.
Commissioner Hoyt,
I also support the resolution.
Commissioner Boucher,
I do not support high density in the resolution. So no.
Commissioner Gerston,
I do not support this resolution.
Commissioner McWood.
No.
It passes.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, thank you all so much. We have more on our agenda, and I really appreciate the patience of the applicants at 3410. Commissioner Siddiqui, would you care to introduce your this item?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Finley. So I believe the order will be I will introduce this project, and then we will give time to the applicant to speak for 5 minutes, and then the neighbors will speak for 5 minutes, and then I will introduce the resolution, and then we can proceed with the normal way that the commission would do this. Is that okay, Commissioner Finley?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, great. So before I introduce this, I just want to say that I have been very heartened. This was my first resolution as being on ANC, and I'm very heartened by how welcoming and helpful the neighbors were. They welcomed me and gave me a tour of the neighborhood to help me understand what was going on. And they also had another Zoom meeting with me, and they've been very, very helpful. They've also been in touch with the entire commission. So thank you so much for that. This is actually a second time the ANC is looking at this project. So the ANC resolution 2020-13 resolved that ANC supported restoring the front porch and had no objection to the hyphen design as it was smaller in scale and massing the existing structure, but urged the applicant to reconsider scale and massing of the remaining addition and would be viable on both sides, visible both sides from the street, and would introduce a new roof line at the same height as existing. So that was the result from the last ANC resolution. And so now we're gonna hear from the applicant on sort of their revision. And I will pull up their slides. And Cal, I will ask you to unmute.
I believe that did it?
Yes, we can hear you. All right, so
Great.
I will share my screen now. And I think you all should be able to see my screen.
The hour is late, so I will move through this quickly. I've been asked tonight to brief you on the significant changes that have been made to this proposal since we brought it to you before in December. In our earlier ANC discussions, and when we went before the HBRB, we heard three things. One, reduce the footprint projection into the rear yard. Two, reduce the east-west width of the mass of the addition to match the existing house. And three, modify the roof and lower it in deference to the historic asset. In response to number one, we have pulled the overall extension of the footprint into the backyard back from 26 to 14.6 feet, a reduction of 12 feet, which is approximately 45% of what was originally proposed, of the originally proposed amount. This change, along with aligning the sides, has created a 40% reduction in the footprint of the new amount added to the original proposal, Reducing the east-west size of the building to align with the mass of the original house creates a 33% reduction of floor 1 and 2 living space from the space of new space added in the original proposal. That calculation also includes east and west side bay projections, which are an idiom of the existing house and are critical to achieving workable rooms. Number three was modify the roof and lower it in deference to the historic asset. We changed from a gable to a hip roof, which takes away half of the roof mass above the ceiling of the second floor ceiling of the structure. We also lowered the eave line approximately 2 feet. The eave now aligns with the head of with the hyphen as it was originally drawn, and the heads of the windows of the existing house, the head height of the windows on the existing house. But the sloping soffits still allow some wall and trim above the windows in the addition. Next slide, please. What I've got here, and I hope you all have reviewed this ahead of time, as well as the original proposal, is the original proposal first, and then second, the revised proposal. This is the lot occupancy diagram, which shows the footprint of the original proposal, as well as showing the outline of the original house, the existing house, with its additions in the back, which were original to the building. The thing that's important to note here is that in this proposal, there was still 18% of the 40% lot occupancy that's allowed that was not used in the original proposal. Next slide, please. So the screen porch has been eliminated from the project, which was important to the client, and the screen porch on the front of the house is to remain. And that has brought the footprint back by 10 feet. And then the balance of the project was reduced on 2 stories by another 2 feet, as well as being pulled in 4 feet on both on the collected sides on the second floor and part of the first as well. The thing to note is that of the lot occupancy that's allowed, now the percentage that isn't used that still remains on the lot is 28.7%. Next slide, please. These show the first floors and give the dimensions that are associated with them all that I just recited to you. Number one, and most important, with the alignment of the sides, with the existing house, we've compressed the kitchen, we've compressed the dining area, and the bay idiom is really critical to allowing both of those rooms to have adequate width to work. Eliminating the porch and pulling in the sides, again, reduced the overall living space on the site by 33%. Next slide, please. This is a modest house as it exists right now. It will be a modest house when it's finished. That's important to my client. And you can see by the scale of the furniture that these are small rooms. The front of the house is living area, which is living rooms. It will really ultimately only accommodate 3 or 5 pieces of furniture. And the front part of the house will now have closets to support the front hall, a powder room in the new addition, a pantry to support the kitchen, and a rear hallway, and a modest dining area at the size of 10'6" by 18 feet, not grand rooms. There is no intention here to create a monster mansion or to actually build a house that's out of scale with the others that are in this row of houses. Second floor, please. Again, the primary suite, which is created here, is a 10 by 15 size room. That's a queen size bed that's drawn there. You can see the scale of it relative to the size of the room. It's a normal sized bathroom, certainly not a mansion sized aspiration by a long shot, and 2 other bedrooms at modest scale and size with bathrooms as well. Next slide, please. The original proposal is the upper image here. It had a gable roof, which matched the gable roof of the original house. Elevations, of course, are deceptive, and you never see a house fully in direct elevation without the benefit of perspective. But one thing to note is that the mass and scale has been lowered. The And the roof is now laid down, taking away half of the mass above the second story of the original proposal. And also that the scale at 19.6 is considerably less than the 30 feet that the original house is of the mass of the new addition beyond the hyphen. The historic guidelines tell you not to extend the mass of the existing house, to separate a new addition by use of a hyphen. It's one of the very clear things that's written about architectural design, current thinking related to the extension of historic fabric. But this is clearly secondary to the existing historic asset, and it does not by a long shot come close to doubling the existing house. Next slide, please. This shows the current proposal on the upper image, and below what exists on the house right now, which is an addition on the back that's already there, which is part of the existing footprint of the house as it exists. Next slide, please. And the other elevations. The one thing that I would point out about this, the front is the way that the front is right now. It'll be obviously be cleaned up and restored. And the back elevation, which is by far the simplest and most respectful of the historic asset of any of the additions that have been made on all the other houses in this row. It repeats the characteristics of the front of the house. It's small in scale, and the roof is laid down as it stands now and considerably reduced in mass over what it was in the original proposal. Next slide, please. These are rear yard perspectives. Next slide, please. The existing condition, you can see that addition that I just referred to that projects out. It's the white box stuck on the back of the house right now. The gray one is the house immediately to the east of 3410. Next slide, please. Oh, that one. Hold for a second. This was the original. No, next slide. Sorry. Wait a second.
Do you want me to go this one?
No, go back, please. Yeah, there it is. This was an exhibit that, no, one more forward.
All right, there you go.
This was an exhibit that was submitted in the last hearing when we met with you. And it actually misaligned the addition. It did two things that were incorrect. It misaligned the addition by the amount that shows with the red lines. And it also is taking an elevation and pasting it onto a perspective drawing or picture. The benefit of perspective, of course, is that it diminishes mass over distance. The other thing that's deceptive about this, of course, is that this image doesn't come close to showing the full breadth of the space behind these houses before you reach the alley, and then the space that exists in the yards on the other side of the alley, and then finally the houses. This projection into the backyard, which I'll show you in a second again, really doesn't come close to making a wall across the center of this particular block. Next slide, please. So there it is again, the house as it exists. This was the original proposal. You can see the one-story porch in the back, the screen porch that was a part of the original proposal, and the mass of the proposal as it was originally done. Next slide, please. This is the reduced version. You can see that the roofs have now laid down, and that the block of this has grown smaller by about 2 feet. And you actually can see that it's consistent in size and scale with the house immediately to the right of it in this image. But don't forget how much space exists to the left of this in the image as you look across. This doesn't even get to our garage. Well, actually, I guess you can see the very beginning of the garage at the left-hand edge of this drawing, of this picture. Next slide, please. Now, the issue of open space in the middle of the block was a considerable talking point. Number one, the Cleveland Park Historic District, as it's written, does not designate or talk about open space behind buildings. It is not relevant to this conversation, actually. But it is important to the neighbors and to the neighborhood, and it is also important to my client. The houses that exist are built back with one-story additions and two-story additions to the line which we drew. That's where they're built. That's where the line is shown in this drawing. Next slide, please. If you said, so what defines the open space? We said we took the boxes of the houses that are higher and taller, the original masses that have additions on the back. You could just as easily try to follow all of it. And there's about 67,650 square feet in that area that we defined. Of course, a lot of that area is also taken up by garages, which are the gray boxes down the middle. And in fact, please note that to the two lots to the right of 3410, there's an accessory dwelling unit, which is considerably bigger than the addition that we have proposed here. Next slide, please. The additions that already exist projecting inside of that represent about 3,890 square feet. And that's about a percentage of 5.75% of that open area. That's, of course, not including the garages or calculating any of that, which are static. Next slide, please. This shows the addition as it's proposed currently in its smaller state, which is actually a 406 square foot addition to the house. That's about the size of a two-car garage, and certainly smaller than the accessory dwelling unit, two lots to the right. Next slide, please. When you calculate that out, there's then 4,270 square feet of proposed additions. And it means that this change is less than 0.5% difference on the open space, the relative proportion of open space to additions that project into it. It is a de minimis amount. The other thing that I would note is still look carefully at where the edge of this addition is and where the houses are on the other side of the street, the back of the houses on the other side of the street. This is not a wall, a Berlin wall, as it's been called, across the center of this space, which is not shared common space. It is, in fact, private backyards. Next slide, please.
There are no more slides.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Great. So we will go to the neighbors presentation, and Lenice, let me see if I can find you to unmute you. And I know initially I had told you to take 5 minutes, but I know since Mr. Bowie took about 15, you are welcome to take that time as well. So
thank you. I was furiously chatting you because I thought, does everyone really want to hear this tonight, or would we want to put this to another meeting? And I guess you decided to go forward. We're happy to do that. Thank you all.
Not my decision, but please go ahead.
What'd you say?
I said it's not my decision, but please go ahead.
That's why you didn't answer them. Okay.
A motion to adjourn does take precedence, but this is important, and I think we can get through it this evening.
Motion to adjourn, but I couldn't make the motion.
You
right?
could not make that a motion. No.
I don't know if I want to be on this committee. Gosh. So anyway, thank you very much for your time and for your diligence in staying here so late and hearing from us. I know it's late, and I appreciate the chance to make a few very brief remarks. And I'll do my best to keep to the changes and not talk about things that aren't relevant. Next slide. It's been a really long night of emotional appeals and description of glorious to catastrophic outcomes, depending on who was speaking. I sat through the whole FLUM discussion. Of course, we feel emotional about where we live and what our future will look like in it. That is human. That was a large part of what was going on in that meeting. But for the next 5 minutes, you guys are the ANC, and you're to look after community issues. And that's what you're doing. For the next 5 minutes, I'd like to urge that we take a deep breath though and focus on the laws, the regulations, the precedents, and how those law, regulations, and precedents should be applied to this revised proposal. And I think we also need to look at what the outcomes are. Who would suffer them? And what would happen depending on whether this proposal is accepted or rejected? So the review of the original application was, this is round 2, it wound up in round 1, culminating with the direction from the decision by the HPRB that the proposed addition was not compatible as designed because it extended too far into the rear and was wider than the existing house. And its roof line was not lower than the house. So you see it there. The agencies that commented on it unanimously before that converged on this common theme that the proposed, that incompatible meant incompatible with the immediate neighborhood, and that they said it must be reduced. So you see the language there. I can read it to you, but you see it. I think you know. The point is, it's still, they said it's still too long, too wide, and too high. And in this case, I think the revised application only minimally is responsive to this decision. I mean, ever so minutely. We are not the larger houses on the south side of Cleveland Park. And when you look at, go ahead and you look, I'm not even really going to address Mr. Bouie's percentages because his drawings, they're not apples to apples. I'd ask him, what did he measure? What point did he measure from? It's always easy to make those percentages, but you've got to apply apples to apples comparisons. And the way we chose to look at it to make it a lot easier, and you guys may love us for this because it simplifies the math a great deal and doesn't distort the calculations. You have to measure the massing of the addition from the backside of the original house. If you consistently do that, the picture becomes much more clear, and the slides and drawings as is without those consistencies distort and misrepresents how big the reduction. In other words, these percentages and numbers are used to represent that Mr. Bouie took a lot off of his original proposal as it relates to the massing. He didn't. Next slide, please. Okay, not that one, that one. All he really took off was 1 foot, 10 inches of the 2-story block that exists right here. And I want to show you this. Let me see, which slide are we on? If you look at the green, that's what the original house looked like. That's the original mass of the original house. If you look at the blue portion, you'll see that he removed the 1-story porch. This is true. But the part we're still concerned, the part that creates the biggest massing problem and the biggest lack of compatibility with the rest of the neighborhood is the 2-story addition that you see there. And how this length compares with the immediate neighborhood is nicely laid out in the next slide. But stay on this for just a second. The overall length of the revised design is a whopping 24 feet 6 inches, almost 25 feet. And this extension is well beyond any other house in this immediate neighborhood. And quite frankly, well beyond any percentage that I have ever heard of in this historic district. To put it mildly, it's obscene. It's really obscene. It is more than half. It is almost double. And it's not right. Can we have the next slide, please? This is the elevation, and it shows the elevation from another perspective. Which slide? We're on the number 2. Okay. Look at what it looks like. Look at what it looks like. It's 26.4 and then 24.6. That's less than 2 feet. In fact, that's a foot 10 inches. This is the mass we're concerned about. You can't just take a corner here, a corner there, a corner from the top floor, a corner from the bottom floor, corners off the back, and add them all together and say that you significantly reduce the massing. This is way too big for an addition. Let's see the next slide. Now we've used this slide to talk about and show you how out of scope and out of sync it is with the other 2-story additions in the neighborhood. This perspective is based on DC zoning data. At first blush, if you don't look terribly closely, and I know you have to get pretty close, it looks maybe like there are other extensions in the neighborhood that stick out a bit. But actually, when you measure from the footprint, the back footprint of the original house, and each of these houses were 20 by 30, and our proposal talks about their history, what you see being compared there, if you just look down on it, are decks and 1-story additions, not 2-story additions. The typical 2-story addition is less than 12 feet. So I think that this slide, like the others, tells the story. This is just way too big for an addition in this neighborhood of modest houses. Next slide, please. Based on the theme, the length of the extension and how it relates to the other houses on the block, we compiled this data showing the 2-story addition length for the houses on the block. And as you can see, the red bar graph points out that this is the 3410 addition. And look at how big it is in comparison to all the others. It's very notable. This bar graph shows the results and the data do not lie. If you measure from the same place and the same part of the footprint, you can see it much more clearly than meandering through all the unusual and inconsistent comparisons. Next slide, please. And here's the street view. Earlier, Mr. Bowie talked about lowering the eave line. Look what that does. It shows from the front. And one of the critical things in historical preservation, renovations and additions in this community for the longest time has been that it shouldn't show from the street, shouldn't show from the front. If you look at the bays, you can see that the bays are out 2 feet. Now I want to explain these bays because they look really lumpy and strange, but 2 feet on each side. The one existing bay on the front was already there. And we put the little pink line around it to show that there is another bay of equal size behind it. But the odd thing about that bay on the west side is it goes all the way to the ground. So you can see these pink red places are what you can see from the front of the house, and hence are wider. So I don't know why that bay is so long. I don't know why it goes to the floor. For all I know, it goes into the basement, which apparently is huge. I have no idea because we don't have basement drawings here. But it is the modifications to the width here remain a concern, and they're reflected on this slide. And I wanted to, it's kind of hard to see, but this is the same picture that Mr. Bowie showed. And I want to show you, if you look down on it in his inside drawing, in his furniture plan, you see that the bays, where they kind of stick out and where corners have been grabbed and corners have been sort of chopped off here and there. You just can't cut corners like that and not accomplish massing when you look at how much mass is there. So we've talked about the bays, we've talked about the lack of attention to the length of the 2-story addition, the deception in the numbers. We haven't seen any basement plans, so have no idea what's going on there. The roof line, we do appreciate the hip roof change, but that is not new. And you can't take credit for that being new because that was not a hip roof, was in the presentation that was made to the HPRB originally. So to wrap up, I would like to show the last slide, which is the slide that Mr. Bowie presented at the ARC. And the thing that comes to mind for us is that, wow, despite some cosmetic changes, there's little difference between these two images when it comes to the 2-story massing. In fact, one of the people at the ARC said, it looks the same. And we wondered why Mr. Bowie was showing it, because it really makes our case. And if you look at how far, he came in 1'10". That's what the red line is. And it shows how little the massing is reduced and how much the addition blocks the highly valued green space behind these houses, which has promoted a genuine sense of community and connectedness among the neighbors. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. But as promised when I began, I wouldn't take much time, and I want to talk about the outcomes of your vote to reject this revised proposal or accept it. But if you reject it, let's talk about what happens, which is what we would like you to do. We would like you to reject it and send the architect back to the drawing board to do the right thing, and the same thing that everyone else in this neighborhood has done, to protect the modest house, to protect the ability for young families, individuals, couples with dogs, whatever, to be able to buy one of the smaller starter homes in Cleveland Park, which is what our little street is known for. So what are the outcomes for the applicant? What's the outcome? One person is disappointed, one person, and may have to consider instructing one architect, Mr. Bowie, to create an addition that complies with the rules. What is the outcome for the neighbors who object? If you were to approve it, it would establish a precedent that has never been established before and fundamentally changes the character and nature of our block. Housing prices, I heard a lot of talk about prices and how they were too high in this neighborhood. Housing prices on this block are likely to rise as houses turn over and are sold, because this would create a precedent that would just allow more additions, bigger additions, and prices to go up. And if that happens, you guys are right. As you mentioned in the flum, it is far less likely that a person of more modest means could buy a smaller starter house in Cleveland Park, which may lead to less diversity in our vibrant neighborhood. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope I didn't take too long. We have others that would like to speak, and I think you have their names.
Yes.
Or I forget, they may come in a different order, but.
And so what we're going to do is we're gonna do the commission discussion first, and then at the time when the community is supposed to speak, then we'll take community input. But I do have their names, and I'm ready to hear from them.
Okay.
Commissioner Siddiqui, thank you for writing that, and thank you both Cal and Denise for presenting. Commissioners, I believe Commissioner Siddiqui should be moving his resolution. Is that not right? And so Commissioner Siddiqui, if you want to just read the resolve clauses, that's okay.
Sure. Be it resolved that ANC 3C supports the revised proposal with rear additions and lowered roof. Be it resolved that the ANC authorizes the chair and the commissioner for 3C05 to represent the commission on this matter.
Okay. I'll second it. Thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui. Is there any discussion on the resolution? And Commissioner McWood, if you think we should be moving a community discussion now, I appreciate your feedback. And if you think we should do that first, or whether we should discuss the resolution first.
Whatever you want to do. I don't think there's a.
I did want to point out that we gave you some revisions to the resolution, not the one that Mr. Siddiqui finally presented, but the one that he shared with us, which was the first one you saw. We gave you some renovations,
Renovations works, and it's late. It's very late. So in those were edits to the whereas clauses, I presume?
Correct, as well as the be it resolved.
Okay, great.
Obviously, okay.
Commissioner Gersten?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if we were doing commissioner comments or community.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So I have serious concerns about this in terms of massing and compatibility, and I don't feel that the revisions really responded to HPRB's concerns at all. This is a massive addition in a historic neighborhood. So in the context, for example, of the last vote that we just took on the high density resolution, if we're relying on the ANCs to defer to HPRB to protect our neighborhood's historic character, let's look at how this vote turns out. I mean, we're in trouble. So in my opinion, counting on the ANCs to be the firewall against excessive development only works when ANCs defer in historic neighborhoods to the HPRB. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Gersten. Commissioner McWood?
Yeah, if we're going to do comments now, I'll do mine as well. I think as the neighbors know and a couple of commissioners know, I know the architect. I know Mr. Bowie very well. And I hold him in high regard. I think he's an excellent architect. I like the architecture of the revised edition very much. Appreciate the fact that he has lowered the roof, that he pulled in the sides. I think he was partially responsive to our resolution. But I think it's, so I'm going to disappoint him. He'll get over it. I think it's very significant, the setting of this block. The HPRB commented on it, and I think we need to acknowledge it. It is a unique block in the historic district. The residents have really done a remarkable job of trying to maintain the open space and be very disciplined with their additions, particularly since these are all, every single one of them is the same size house, started out as the same size house. I mean, these were all smaller homes. The block was intended to be smaller homes. I think there is nothing wrong with a smaller home and putting on an addition that is also a small addition. I think scale in this context is very important. So while there are many things that I appreciate about the revision, because of the scale, I'm not going to be able to support it, but I think it is moving in the right direction, and I really hope that it could get another round at HPRB and then have some further revisions, and hopefully we can support it, or at least I could support it.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
So I had a question, and I don't know if we can pull up the slide again, about both like the lot lines and that the sorry, it's late, the overview of the zoning map that shows the like 3 other houses that have kind of more of a similar 2-story addition, but they're kind of at the ends of the block. So I'm struggling with understanding like the out of context part when that visualization shows that other houses have done pretty much something more similar.
Can you pull that up?
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Baggett, was it in Cal Bowie's presentation or the second one?
Well,
Fine,
the second one, yeah.
Yeah, I can explain.
The zoning map.
I can see that. That's an important point. Let me.
Thank you.
Okay, what you got here? You've got the 2-story addition on the left, okay, 3418. That actually does not go out any further. In other words, that's a patio. The 2-story addition, oh, that's a single story, okay. The 2-story cuts across here, and it really doesn't go out. It's roughly equivalent of 3412 if you look at it. It's higher, it has a 3rd story, but that is because that was before the historic district was formed. And so that was built without any historic preservation review board review. So I don't really think you can really consider that because it was before that. But nevertheless, it's on that alley. And then the one that's on the other 3404, the 2-story addition does not go out. It's roughly equivalent if you look across, and it is certainly, it's probably between 12 and 16 feet. But I will tell you, this one, 3404, is the only one you might think is bigger, and that is one of 8 houses. So, you have to take it in the context that it's one of 8, but even it does not go out further than 16 feet, I believe. And the owner of this house is going to be speaking, so she can certainly explain that to you if you want further explanation. But we are making the point that It's the two-story that you have to compare. You can't compare it to decks. You can't compare it to porches. You can't compare it to one-stories because it's the massing. It's this two-story block that is the problem from our perspective. Does that
Thank
make
you. That was helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Any other comments from commissioners? If not,
So I just want to clarify 2 or 3 things, Bo.
Sure.
I think and I also want to because I proposed the resolution, so I should clarify. I think this was also a difficult one for me, and it's there were certain things I was considering. I think the neighbors are absolutely right that when you look at the reduction, it's just the porch, and then it's less than 2 feet. I think the things that I was looking at were what changed, right? And if the change was enough. And essentially the change that was asked for was reduce how far it is into the yard. The roof was too prominent, and the addition projected past the sides of the house. And so for me, the reason I sort of went on this other side of the resolution was looking at these things and then saying, okay, if for these 3, is it enough or not? Right? And I think Commissioner McWood was right. It's in the right direction. The question is if it's enough. And my determination was that it was. I do want to add that the one thing that I was concerned about was the looking at it from the street. That was, I think, one of my primary things. And the bays are showing from the side, but because they're symmetric, I thought that would be okay, and I didn't believe that it was too much of an extension on the side. But again, I'm just telling you all, just sort of responding and telling you all why I made that particular decision. But I also completely agree with some assessments that Commissioner McWood and Commissioner Gersten made.
Thank you, Commissioner Siddiqui. Okay, we'll move to community comment, and I know we've got some people who've stood strong through our long meeting this evening. So please raise your hand if you.
No, I have a list, Commissioner.
Oh, you do? You do? Great.
So, Anne Loikow, I'm going to ask you to unmute, so you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm the owner of the house.
We're having trouble hearing you, Anne. Can you either get close to the mic or?
I'm the owner of the house at 3404 Rodman, which is 2-story. It sticks out 16 feet. The second floor, though, is only about 2/3 of that because there's an open deck. And in any case, it's 8 feet less than what is proposed for 3410. And I just wanted to say, I am so frustrated with Mr. Bowie's presentations because I feel there's a lot of deception on numbers for those of you who are on the numbers business. What Lenise Jorgensen was trying to explain to you, all of these houses are originally 30 feet deep, 20 feet wide with a front porch, and they had a 6 by 12 foot sleeping porch on the back. Virtually almost all of them have done something. Well, everyone's done something to the sleeping porch. And in this case of this house, it's being demolished. Mr. Bowie tries to measure from the 1960 addition to that sleeping porch, which brought it out 10 feet, which is why he said it was only 14 feet bigger rather than 24 feet 6 inches, trying to say that it's smaller. Similarly, in looking at the large part of the addition, originally it was 24 feet across, which is 2 feet wider on both sides than the original house. It still is 2 feet wider on both sides, but he turned them into bays. One of them that goes down to the ground and one that doesn't, and cut out corners. One on one side, they're 2 feet by 2 feet, and on the other side, they're 2 feet by 4 feet. But if you look at it, and that's what some of our drawings will show you, it's basically the same width on the first floor as the original proposal. It is narrower on the second floor. Likewise, he made a comment about the house looking at down the yards in the back, the house next to it, how it wasn't that, that one stuck out so far. It doesn't. His addition is something like 17 feet longer than the house that is next to him. And then his pictures, I think it's pages 17 through 20, show he's trying to count the alleys, the garages, and all the yards behind the houses on the other side of the alleys. Is when we're talking about open space. The draft design guidelines for the Cleveland Park Historical Society talk about how one of the essential features of Cleveland Park is that it's garden-like quality. And when you look down the block right now, on our side, on the 8 houses that face Rodman Street, that were all built at the same time, designed by the same architect, with really interesting changes to make them look unique, but they're all the same size. And on some of his drawings, he makes 3410 look like it's narrower. So you could think it's not as wide. It's not, it's the same size as all the other houses that you start with, the base. So you need to realize that you're getting a distortion. Anyway, that the visually open rear yard, which emphasize the shared nature of natural spaces behind these houses, is again mentioned in the draft guidelines. It's one of the things that's significant about Cleveland Park and significant about this particular block and neighborhood. As we mentioned before, a lot of the streets in Cleveland Park were laid out by the Olmsted brothers, and we're kitty corner literally from Melvin Hazen Park, which is part of Rock Creek Park, which the Olmsteds helped design. And the backyards of these houses are very important, but you shouldn't be counting the public alley and the fences in the backyard of the row houses on the back part. It's the backyards of this particular subset of houses, which is where this one is being put. So what you have is a building that's being proposed that's only 1 foot 10 inches shorter than before, is basically as wide, at least on the first floor, as it was in the beginning. It hasn't really changed. And contrary to what Mr. Bowie says, he says these houses are so small you can't put anything in it but one sofa in the living room. I have a grand piano in my living room, as well as a sofa and multiple chairs. These houses can be furnished very nicely, but they're small houses. And you have to realize you don't use the furniture you have for a mansion in a house that's a modest house. And these were designed for the affordable housing for the federal employees who originally started to work at the Bureau of Standards that was built right up the street where now UDC is.
And
they have that kind of scale, and that's what has to be
respected. Sorry, can we, in the interest of trying to finish by midnight, can please just focus on the new aspects of the home, and also for the other speakers, if we can only focus on new information, not repeat the information that's been spent. You're welcome to speak and say, I support what this person said.
Well, I just wanted to say that his measurements are all very deceptive. And you need to understand that it hasn't changed much at all.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann. Next person on the list, Bob Huebner. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Let me find you. There's 2 Bobs here.
Thank you very much, and thank everyone for staying so late. I'll be very, very brief. My comment picks up on the note Lanice made earlier regarding precedent. I'm really worried about it, and I'm worried it's going to set, if this project is approved and built, it will set a dangerous precedent. In fact, Mr. Bowie indirectly made my point. You recall the slide he showed, he was talking about green space, where he had a build to line. He put a build to line as a kind of a reference point to judge how far the proposed addition would go out. Where was that build to line put? It was put on the house of the 8, the one house that had the greatest extension, as a point of reference. And my fear is that when the next application comes before the ANC for a renovation, that architect will in turn do the same thing. And that build to line will be nearly 25 feet of an extension from the original footprint of the house. And you can hear the argument, and it's a pretty good one. Well, my renovation plan is only a few feet beyond 3410 Rodman. And so it will go for each subsequent renovation application. And it's just, I think we're at a tipping point with this application. I'm concerned about it. And if approved, we'll start a slippery slope and really change for more massing and really change the character, the unique architectural fabric of this treasure of a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Is Dan here? I don't see him on the list, but if he is, please text me. In the interest of time, we'll move on to Kathy. I'm asking you to unmute.
Okay, it's late. I'm going to edit myself and just simply say that I was disappointed with the revision. It seems to be an end run around the HPRB request. I think the massing remains a problem. Width remains a problem. And I think it, in summation, expresses just, you know, negligible concern for the zeitgeist of the neighborhood. I think that's pretty much what I want to say.
Thank you, Kathy. In the interest of time, Commissioner Siddiqui, how many more people are on the list?
2 more, and they might not even be here.
Great, because I was going to say 3 more comments and we'll wrap it up. And
okay, cool. Is Anjali Kumar here? I don't see her list on there. And is Ann Varnon here? No, I don't see them.
I think everybody went to sleep.
Well,
everybody went to bed.
Bob, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Sorry.
Real quick. My one point is this. The rear yards of houses in the historic district, there's long been a practice of not imposing them to the historic district scrutiny, except in the actual design of what's being put up. The design guidelines by the Historical Society mention rear yards in a very few instances. They primarily refer to Newark Street and the topographical changes of the valleys. Our organization, Cleveland Park Smart Growth, has reviewed those guidelines and provided comments that that type of analysis, it needs to be either very specific and spelled out as a guideline, or as a general principle is something that we as a historic district have to have some certainty around. To have a street by street ad hoc basis as to whether or not neighbors don't like something going on in someone's backyard is a disaster of a policy. And I think there needs to be some confidence by homeowners of what the actual guidelines are. Absent any, and we don't have any because even the CPHS guidelines haven't even been approved by CPHS, let alone the HPRB. I think this whole conversation about the backyard is dangerous for the historic district and homeowners' property rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Lanice, you have one comment to make, and then we're going to turn it over to Cal to respond briefly to the comments that were made.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that that the HPRB does have lots and lots of precedent situations in which they have dealt with massing, in which, you know, we do have a DC law that requires that everything go for review. And, you know, law is law and facts are facts, but facts aren't any good unless you apply the law. So there's no one size fits all. It's all in context to the house and the neighborhood and the immediate surroundings. So while it may be good, Bob, to have a rigid guideline, I don't think it's going to work because it's really a facts and contextual analysis. But that was all. And also I wanted to say that Ms. Kumar, she just couldn't stay up that late. She wasn't feeling very well, and she was disappointed that this went so long and she couldn't speak. And also Ann Varnon has to have some medical procedures tomorrow and she couldn't stay up, but everybody wanted to speak. And obviously we now have 13 neighbors and growing of people who are very, very concerned about this addition. We welcome everyone to our neighborhood, but we welcome everybody who wants to, you know, we've had a common community ethic here about the size of our additions, and it would just be very unfortunate that that could not be continued because it allows for more people. While, you know, somebody responded here that it's not a starter house. Well, It was for my husband and I. We bought it when we were flat broke and it was run down and we had to figure out how to live in it and rebuild it and all of that. So I agree housing is too high. These houses are too high. But, you know, if it goes higher, then there certainly isn't going to be any way to get into Cleveland Park, you know, for people of more modest means. So that's all I had to say. I appreciate your time. It is quite late.
Thank you. Commissioners, is there further discussion on the resolution Commissioner Siddiqui presented? Don't all speak at once. Okay. So without further ado, we'll be moving to a vote on Commissioner Siddiqui's resolution. We've unfortunately, Commissioner Reba and Commissioner Boucher are no longer on this call, but I see Commissioner Fink. If you're in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand and keep it up until I've called your name. And Rachel, please take note. Okay, I see Commissioner Pagets, Commissioner Siddiqui, Commissioner Hoyt, and Commissioner Fink. All those opposed, please raise your hand.
Yeah.
Commissioner Finley, Commissioner Gersten, and Commissioner McQuid. The resolution passes 4-3. And thank you all for bearing with us on this evening. Okay, next item is the Secretary's report. And because Commissioner Boucher is not feeling well, we will not be doing that right now.
Well, what do you do about the people that are not left early? I mean, you have that can happen like that where people can just.
Yes, they don't get to vote if they've left early. And if they step out during a meeting, during a vote, they also don't get to vote.
Well, that's why we were trying to get off the end of the agenda, obviously.
Okay, well, thank you. So let's see, we've got this treasurer's report. Commissioner Siddiqui, do you have a report for us this evening? It's okay if you want to present next meeting.
I will present next meeting. I haven't even gotten the spreadsheets from Gottlieb yet, so
Okay.
or from Commissioner Boucher. So
okay. Are there any objections to skipping SMD reports this evening?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll just get to doubly update folks next month. So thank you all. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
yes.
So moved.
Great. Okay. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you.
You.